Chapter 328. The time to lay down the 9 heavens, sealing devil formation with Ciebulo, was quickly approaching. Ciebulo was slowly walking over. He still looked lazy and sleepy, but for some reason, his aura seemed to have undergone some changes. As for what kind of change he had, Mu Yu was unable to tell. In any case, this person was emitting evil chi from head to toe. He was definitely not a good person. As the leader of evil sect, his arrival was as unwelcome as White Ape Demon King. Everyone more or less knew that Ciebulo had been clamoring to chop off Sword Shadow Chin Feng's finger. Therefore, the moment he arrived, everyone vigilantly stared at him. "Why are you all looking at me like this? Is there something dirty on my face?" Ciebulo reached out his hand and touched his face. He really thought that there was dust on his face. Mu Yu stared at Ciebulo's right hand in astonishment. She didn't know when, but there was an extra finger on the side of Ciebulo's right thumb. Including the time he met Wu Yen in Luinyuan, Mu Yu had seen Ciebulo twice. He was certain that Ciebulo's right hand was completely normal during those 2 times. There was no extra finger. But now that Mu Yu looked at Ciebulo's right hand, that 6th finger seemed to have existed for countless years. It didn't have any abrupt feeling. Compared to other fingers, it didn't have any difference. 6th finger has grown out? Feng Haochen sat on a stool and looked at Ciebulo with a relaxed expression. Ciebulo saw Feng Haochen and immediately walked over with his big belly. He sat down in front of Feng Haochen and proudly said, "6 evils, it has been a long time since we last met. I feel that if you still had your cultivation, I would definitely not lose to you." This was 6 evils? Ciebulo touched the 6th finger of his right hand, as if he was looking at an extraordinary treasure. Mu Yu suddenly understood what Shiman Wuji meant when he said, 6 evils, that day. It turned out that the so-called 6 evils was Ciebulo's 6th finger. No wonder when Ciebulo accepted disciples, he made them swear to chop off the fingers of Sword Shadow Chin Feng's disciple before killing him. It turned out that Sword Shadow Chin Feng had once chopped off Ciebulo's 6th finger. Mu Yu had seen the power of the 6th finger. Back then, Ciebulo had only opened the brocade box by a slit, and an indescribable evil aura had gushed out, turning everything in the room evil. It was extremely strange. Feng Haochen shook his head helplessly. "If you use the 6 evils to cause trouble, I'll find a way to cut it down again." Ciebulo shook his 6th finger in disdain. He was able to control the movements of his 6th finger with ease. His 6th finger now looked like an ordinary finger. It didn't have the evil aura of that day. "You are no longer that Jianing Qinfeng, so stop threatening me." I feel that after Lu Xie came back, he seemed to have become 50 years younger. Let me tell you, when I was having sex with the female elder of Inexhaustible Cloud sect last night, I finally tried a difficult move on the bed that I had never dared to try before. That's enough. Can you not be so disrespectful? Don't you feel embarrassed in front of this group of juniors? Feng Haochen's face was filled with helplessness. What's so embarrassing about it? Everyone laughed at me for being too crazy, and I laughed at him for not being able to see through it. You see, we're all unusual people, so we have to do something different. You and Phantom Rain, these 2 serious people are enough. I'll just be in charge of doing happy things. Ciebulo seemed to have changed into a different person. He didn't blame Feng Haochen. Instead, he proudly showed off his principles. Mu Yu noticed that Ciebulo mentioned Phantom Rain again. The White Ape Demon King once said that Phantom Rain was the person who sealed him. Mu Yu even saw the formation left behind by Phantom Rain in the 2nd layer of heaven. How did this Phantom Rain know my master? What kind of divine being is he? Since you are here, we should start preparing the 9 heavens, sealing devil formation. Feng Haochen clearly understood Ciebulo's temperament. He didn't want to continue arguing with him. Ciebulo's gaze swept around and landed on Ku Mu. He playfully said, "You actually invited your love rival, Ku Mu Chong Ching. I really envy your courage. Oh right. I said that Ku Mu would get into trouble sooner or later if he cultivated poison. I was right. You will also get into trouble if you cultivate evil energy. Ku Mu didn't hold back. Xie Bulo didn't get angry at all. He said, You still have that weird temper. Why don't you change it? Strange, we obviously know each other. Why didn't we recognize each other that day at Luin Garden? Ku Mu snorted. You really know how to disguise yourself. One moment you are white-haired, and the next moment you are a middle-aged man. Who would recognize you? However, Ku Mu changed a lot after he lost his cultivation and took the returning to origin pill. It was normal that Xie Bulo didn't recognize him. See, the person with the lowest cultivation also has the worst temper. Forget it. I am in a good mood today. Since you know how to set up the formation, I won't bicker with you. Let's go to the empty land. The 9 heavens sealing devil formation is suitable there. Xie Bulo stood up and lazily walked out of the door. And Ping, wait for us here with Ling and Qing Mei. We will be back soon. Feng Haochen instructed. And Shu nodded. Lan Ling was a bit disappointed. She had planned to join in the fun. Xiao Shuai didn't go either. He was lying on the table lazily and eating. After coming here, he had lived a very comfortable life. He often drilled himself into the girl's breast. He was extremely shameless. What is the empty land? Mu Yu didn't understand. The empty land is a place where the 5 elements can't be controlled at will, Ku Mu said. There is such a place? Where is it? Mu Yu continued to ask. It was reasonable to say that if the 5 elements couldn't be controlled at will, it must be a place where the 5 elements didn't exist. However, it was impossible for it to be a place where metal, wood, water, fire, and earth didn't exist. Everything in the world was made up of the 5 elements. Humans were no exception. The 5 elements existed in every corner of the 3 continents. However, humans were a miraculous combination of the 5 elements. They had the characteristics of the 5 elements. However, because the 5 elements were combined together, they reinforced and restrained each other. Therefore, Yaman couldn't control humans. In the sky? There shouldn't be any of the 5 elements in the sky, right? Xiang Nan asked. There is mist in the sky. Although the amount is small, it doesn't mean that there isn't any, Qiao Shui said politely. That place is very secretive. You don't need to know where it is. Just follow me. Xie Bulo led everyone away from the 50-mile garden in the south and headed north. Only Feng Haochen and Xie Bulo knew the extent of Xie Bulo's cultivation. He directly led everyone to break through the void. After 2 hours, he reappeared. They landed in a very mystical place. As far as the eye could see, there were all kinds of tall and slender stone peaks everywhere. Each stone peak was a few hundred meters tall, and the walls of the stone peaks were covered with lush plants. Below the stone peaks was a flowing river. One could not see the end of the river as far as the eye could see. The center of each stone peak was filled with lava. The lava boiled and jumped, but it didn't splash out. It didn't ignite the plants on the stone peak. The plants were full of vitality. They weren't affected by the temperature of the lava at all. The stone peaks were inlaid with all kinds of shiny metal ores. They were extremely dazzling under the sunlight. This is the ethereal land? Mu Yu was surprised. He could clearly sense the vigorous vitality of the plants on the stone peak. Those plants couldn't be fake. Not only him, but Qingyan, Luo Shang, Xiang Nan, and Qiao Shui were also puzzled. They could all sense the 5 elements that they were familiar with. Shouldn't the ethereal land be a place where the 5 elements didn't exist? No matter how they looked at it, this place felt like the gathering place of the 5 elements. What do you know? Don't think that this place has the 5 elements. It's actually a forbidden area in the Yuman. If you don't believe me, go and try it yourself, Xie Bulo said. Indeed, the 5 of them didn't believe this. Mu Yu took a step forward and landed on a pine tree near the stone peak. He could clearly sense the powerful vitality of the pine tree. He could even see the pine tree's vitality pulsating. Its roots were extending into the crevices, and its leaves were sprouting. He touched the branches of the pine tree, and with a thought, he wanted the pine tree to grow faster. However, a strange resistance came from the pine tree. The pine tree did not sprout according to his wishes, but stood motionless on the cliff. Qiao Shui stood on the surface of the water with her brows furrowed. She was in the same situation as Mu Yu. There was clearly an endless river here, but she couldn't control it. It was as if her ability to control water had disappeared. Luo Shang stood at the edge of the lava. He reached his hand into the lava and gently stirred it. The temperature of the lava was extremely high. It could instantly turn a person into ashes. However, it didn't affect him at all. Even so, he couldn't control the lava. Qingyan and Xiangnan were also puzzled. The ores on the cliff weren't under Qingyan's control, and the rocks on the cliff had also lost contact with Xiangnan. They had never encountered such a situation before. The 5 elements of metal, wood, water, fire, and earth are in a relatively balanced state. The 5 elements reinforce and suppress each other. If you want to control one of them, you will be hindered by the other 4 elements. Therefore, the Yuman of the 5 elements ability is ineffective. It's impossible to break the balance here. Even the 5 Yuman of the 5 elements couldn't make use of the terrain here, Feng Haochen explained. The so-called ethereal land didn't mean that the 5 elements didn't exist. It meant that the 5 elements were balanced. Everyone was wrong about this. We humans are a balanced body of the 5 elements. Although we have the elements of the 5 elements in our bodies, no human can break this balance. Therefore, you can't kill us by stripping us of the 5 elements. The terrain here relies on the principle of the balance of the 5 elements in the human body. You can only control the 5 elements you bring with you, but you can't destroy the mountains, rivers, grass, and trees here. Feng Haochen had never explained the principle of the 5 elements to them before. Now that he explained it, everyone was enlightened. Although the Yuman had powerful combat strength, they had their own weaknesses. They would always be restrained by the Yuman of the other elements. Humans had fought with the Yuman for millions of years. They had a thorough understanding of the Yuman. It was a very strange way of thinking to think of using the 5 elements to suppress the Yuman's ability. But I still don't understand. Master, you said that we are humans too. There should be a balance of the 5 elements in our bodies. However, if Spirit Lord Yuman can't break this balance, why can the few of us have the ability to control the 5 elements? Mu Yu asked. Feng Haochen stroked his white beard and said with a smile, "This involves everyone's fate." Although everyone's 5 elements are balanced, it's impossible for everyone to have the same amount of 5 elements in their bodies. There will be more or less deviations. For example, some people are born lacking wood element. This doesn't mean that they don't have wood elements in their bodies. It's just that their wood element is weaker than the other elements. However, it's not enough to break the balance of the 5 elements. As for the 5 of you, take Mu Yu as an example. The wood element in your body is very abundant, while the other 4 elements are almost absent. You are of the wood element and you lack 4 elements. This rare physique was discovered by Spirit Lord Yuman in the cycle of reincarnation and reincarnated into your body. It's the same for the others. If Spirit Lord Yuman wanted to live in a human body, he had to find a suitable body. Mu Yu and the others had a rare physique, which was found by Spirit Lord Yuman. Thus, they also had Spirit Lord Yuman's abilities. Do you know why there are so many babies in the world that die naturally soon after birth? It's because the 5 elements in their bodies are out of balance when they are born. They don't reach the lowest state of balance, so they don't live for long. The closer the 5 elements in their bodies are to the perfect balance of the 5 elements, the longer their lifespan will be. As for the 5 of you, your bodies are seriously out of balance. You should have died the moment you were born, but you were lucky enough to be possessed by Spirit Lord Yuman. That's why you survived, Ciebulo said with a face full of ridicule. They were people who would have died the moment they were born. Chapter 329. Mu Yu and the other four were extremely shocked, and a strange feeling emerged in their hearts. According to Ciebulo's words, they were originally humans who couldn't survive, but they relied on the power of the 5 elements Spirit Lord Yumeng to survive. It seemed that the 5 Spirit Lords Yumeng had saved their lives. Thinking of this, Mu Yu couldn't hate the sleeping Spirit Lord Yumeng. After all, with their physiques, they should have died not long after they were born, but the parasitic power of the Spirit Lord Yumeng had allowed them to survive. Mu Yu and the other four smiled bitterly at each other. It turned out that they weren't special, but people who shouldn't have survived. What would happen if the 5 elements in a person's body reached a perfect balance? Mu Yu asked. If they weren't killed by an external force, they would obtain the ability to live forever. However, there are too few people who have reached a perfect balance of the 5 elements in their bodies, and there are no more than 20 people in the human race. There are 2 in front of you. Ciebulo casually hooked his arm around Feng Haochen's shoulder, and said proudly, "What?" Jian Yingchen Feng and Ciebulo, the 2 of them were actually existences with eternal life? Mu Yu was extremely shocked. Eternal life meant that they wouldn't die, and such people really existed? He glanced at Qingyan and the others, and they were also extremely shocked. It was obvious that they didn't know about this matter either. Ciebulo, there are some things that shouldn't be said. Feng Haochen helplessly touched his forehead. He couldn't do anything about Ciebulo's big mouth. What? Are you worried that your disciple will covet your immortal physique? Ciebulo mocked. You know what I'm worried about. Feng Haochen frowned. Ciebulo snorted and muttered. The people of the 3rd palace aren't here, and the dead tree already knows about it, so it doesn't matter if they know. Master, you are a person with eternal life, so how old are you? Mu Yu swallowed a mouthful of saliva and asked resentfully. He suddenly understood why the White Ape Demon King, who had lived for several thousand years, wanted to settle accounts with his master. They probably knew each other several thousand years ago. Feng Haochen blinked his eyes, looked at the sky and sighed. How old am I? I can't remember. Also, the 10 great demon kings of the demon race are also considered as eternal existences. Azure Dragon and I are old acquaintances. Your master is even older than me, so he should be considered as my grandfather. Ciebulo was very proud of himself. No wonder Ciebulao was able to convince Azure Dragon not to cause more trouble for the human race. He was an evil person who had lived for a very long time. Just like Azure Dragon, he was an immortal being. Naturally, they would know each other. If my master is your grandfather, then aren't we in your father's generation? Mu Yu blurted out. A wave of evil energy immediately spread out, and Ciebulo angrily said, Brat, do you want to die? Even if this guy is a few hundred years older than me, I'm still a few thousand years older than you. You'll have to call me your grandfather many times over. Mu Yu recalled what the White Ape Demon King had said to Feng Haochen a few days ago. We are all people who have been forgotten by time. So this was what he meant. The White Ape Demon King must have known Jian Ying and Chun Feng for a long time, which was why he said such a thing. As for the so-called Phantom Qin Yu, if Mu Yu did not guess incorrectly, he should be one of the immortals. After laying down the heaven and earth formation, your master will soon die. When this guy was setting up the immortal confinement prison, I was against it. I said that his brain was cramping. There were still so many beautiful women waiting for him to die. After living for a few thousand years, he still didn't return my 6 evils to me. I'm about to die from anger. Ciebulo cursed. Feng Haochen glanced at Ciebulo and said, Living for a long time is not a good thing. Because many things have become indifferent, death is no longer so scary. Let me tell you a secret. Your master loved 3 women in his life. 2 of them died, so he didn't dare to talk about love anymore. He said that he couldn't bear to see the women he loved die while he continued to live an ignoble life. In my opinion, daughters are like clothes. If they die, just change them. If you can't die forever, why would you be afraid of not being able to find a better one? I despise him the most. 500 years ago, when his second lover, Hua Wujing, died of old age, he was so infatuated that he wanted to commit suicide with her. If I didn't pull him back, your master wouldn't have existed. Xie Bulow's words were shocking. You shouldn't have pulled him back. Ku Mu timely interrupted. If Feng Haochen didn't exist, he and Miao Yuyan might have been together. Feng Haochen sighed and said, Xie Bulow, are you done? Xie Bulow shook his head and said, I'm not done. Then, he met Miao Yuyan a few decades ago. He, who hadn't been in love for 500 years, suddenly reignited from the ashes and fell in love with Miao Yuyan. Oh right, I forgot that there was another suitor for Miao Yuyan. Miao Yuyan didn't know that our old monster Chen Feng was immortal. Between Ku Mu and Chen Feng, she chose Chen Feng. This time, he was even more foolish. He actually prepared to spend the rest of his life with Miao Yuyan. So, he made himself into the formation base of the immortal confining prison. He wanted to spend the rest of his life with Miao Yuyan. Xie Bulow paused. He realized that being able to expose Jian Ying Chen Feng's shortcomings in front of the younger generation was very satisfying. Jian Ying Chen Feng couldn't shut Xie Bulow up now. He continued, unfortunately, the ending wasn't very good. Miao Yuyan, as the saintess of the Red Dust sect, shouldn't have been in love. At this moment, the immortal confining prison started to take effect. Our love Saint Chen Feng's cultivation fell, and he couldn't elope with Miao Yuyan. The threefold palace went against their agreement. Feeling disheartened and guilty, Love Saint hid in the Mayan mountain range and prepared to die with the people there. If you had returned the 6 evils to me earlier, I would have rushed to the Red Dust sect and snatched Miao Yuyan back for you. Why did you have to be so bitter? You used the 6 evils too often. Many innocent people were demonized by you. How could I return the 6 evils to you? Feng Haochen's tone was mixed with a hint of anger. However, Ku Mu suddenly became angry. No one expected him to explode in anger. So, you could have asked Xie Bulow to save Yuyan, but you didn't want to do so? In your eyes, Xie Bulow's 6 evils is more precious than Yuyan, right? I thought you would treat her well. Now that I think about it, I was wrong. You can't even compare to Yuyan's happiness. Your mind is full of benevolence and righteousness. You want to be the hero of the world, but you don't dare to be the husband of the woman you love? You're a coward. How dare you say that you love her? For her, I could put down my prejudice against you and let you recover your cultivation to save her. But what about you? What have you done for her? No one had expected the dead tree to be so angry. Xie Bulao Da's tongue had pointed out this matter clearly, letting the dead tree know some secrets. Ku Mu knew that Feng Haochen was an immortal, and that was why he chose to withdraw. He thought that Feng Haochen could give Miao Yuyan the best life. But he was wrong. The old Jian Ying Chen Feng had become the weak Feng Haochen because of the immortal confining prison. He thought that Feng Haochen couldn't save Miao Yuyan because he lost his cultivation. Ku Mu didn't have the ability to break into the Red Dust sect, so he tried his best to help Feng Haochen recover his cultivation. He wanted Feng Haochen to save Miao Yuyan. Feng Haochen could have asked Xie Bulow to help, but he didn't. Miao Yuyan was imprisoned by the Red Dust sect for more than 20 years. Feng Haochen was silent. He wanted to be the hero of the world, but he didn't dare to be the husband of the woman he loved. This sentence hurt him deeply. From the moment he saw his daughter, Tianran, he knew that he was wrong, but he didn't dare to make up for it. He fell in love with 2 people, but neither of them left behind a child because he was afraid of watching his children grow old. But Miao Yuyan secretly gave birth to Tianran. This was something he didn't expect. After a long time, Feng Haochen said softly, "Even if I saved Yuan at that time, I couldn't protect her. She had the red dust sex mark on her, and she would be found no matter where she went. If I wanted to bring her into the immortal confining prison, she would have to give up her cultivation. Think about it, what would happen to you after you lost your cultivation? How long would you live without the origin returning pill? How long would she live?" Ku Mu clenched his fists, then loosened them. He couldn't refute Feng Haochen's words. This was a dilemma. When he lost his cultivation, his body became very old. He almost lost his life after quarreling with the old man. Miao Yuyan was about the same age as him. If she lost her cultivation, she wouldn't be in a good situation. If you loved someone, you didn't want to see them suffer. This was Ku Mu's love. If you loved someone, you didn't want them to lose their life. This was Feng Haochen's love. "Oh, so you are all Casanova?" Xie Bulo sneered, as if he was an outsider watching the show. He only knew how to seek pleasure in the flesh, but he didn't really love a woman. He didn't understand these things. Mu Yu felt an indescribable panic in his heart. His master had made a wrong choice. He had given his cultivation to the third palace, causing him to be unable to stay with Miao Yan. But now he also liked Tianran. Tianran was the red dust sex holy maiden, and it was taboo for her to be with a man. How could he face Tianran in the future? How could he face the enormous red dust sect? "My Casanova, I don't want to see you die. Don't you know that the guardian of the third palace isn't a good person? He has always been coveting something from us. Have you forgotten?" Xie Bulo said. "I know. The guardian wants to obtain the ability of eternal life from me. He wants to wait until I die and my body completely breaks free from the immortal confining prison. Then, he will use the power of the gate of hell to seize my body. At that time, although my soul will die, my body will still be immortal." Feng Haochen snorted. The secret of eternal life was something that everyone coveted. Everyone's lifespan was limited. There were too few people in the human race who had the physique of eternal life. Jian Ying, Chen Feng, and Xie Bulo were both existences with exceedingly high cultivation. The people of the Gate of Hell and the Gate of Life and Death had always chased after eternal life. They sent people to the Moyun mountain range to control Feng Haochen. They also went to the second layer to kill the White Ape Demon King and obtain his body of eternal life. Unfortunately, their plans were unintentionally destroyed by Mu Yu. In the Moyun mountain range, Mu Yu, who had lost control, seriously injured Goei Xianyue. In the second layer, Mu Yu, who wanted to help Qiao Shui, killed Goei Xianyue. How could he know that these two things were related to the secret of eternal life? Feng Haochen was a person who had lived for several thousand years. He knew that the guardian of the third palace had a clear understanding of the movements of the Gate of Hell. If it wasn't for the guardian's tacit approval, how could the Gate of Hell dare to enter the Moyun mountain range so brazenly and target Jian Ying and Chen Feng? It was likely that the guardian had intentionally instructed the Gate of Hell to do these things. If they succeeded, Jian Ying, Chen Feng, and the White Ape Demon King's bodies of eternal life would all fall into the hands of the guardian. The third palace was a mysterious giant. Everyone in the cultivation world had to listen to their orders. No one dared to challenge their prestige. However, no matter how powerful they were, they couldn't escape death. People with supreme power were most afraid of death. Chapter 330. The matter of immortality involved too many things. Feng Haochen had never revealed this secret because he didn't want to drag more people into it. If they weren't talking about the balance of the 5 elements today, Xie Bulo wouldn't have said so much. However, Mu Yu knew that his master, who had no cultivation, was prey in the eyes of the third palace's guardian. His body could be seized by the guardian at any time. However, because of the immortal confining prison, Feng Haochen wasn't too worried about this matter. At least, before the immortal confining prison devoured him, the guardian of the third palace wouldn't be able to do anything to him. In short, the nine heavens sealing devil formation is based on the principle of the balance of the five elements. It will be similar to the formation in the ethereal land. By treating your body as an ethereal land, Spirit Lord Yu Meng won't be able to control your body. His power won't affect your emotions, and he won't be able to control your consciousness. You will be able to control the five elements in the outside world. Feng Haochen brought them to a relatively spacious stone peak. Although Mu Yu and the others couldn't control the grass and trees in this place, they could control the five elements they brought with them from the outside world. By the same principle, by setting up the nine heavens sealing devil formation in their bodies, Spirit Lord Yu Meng wouldn't be able to control their bodies. However, it wouldn't affect Mu Yu and the others' abilities. The balance of the five elements in the ethereal land won't be broken. Therefore, this formation is very troublesome. Xie Bulo kicked a stone away. After a while, the stone flew back and landed in its original position. Xie Bulo said bluntly, "The nine heavens sealing devil formation isn't that easy to succeed. The Spirit Lord Yu Meng in your bodies won't be willing to be trapped. He will definitely wake up and resist. At that time, it will depend on whether your willpower is strong enough. I'll say the ugly words first. If any one of you is controlled by Spirit Lord Yu Meng, I won't hesitate to kill him and send him back into the cycle of reincarnation." The Spirit Lord Yu Meng's power in Mu Yu and the others hadn't fully recovered. Moreover, even if he controlled Mu Yu and the others, they would wake up in the ethereal land. Their abilities would be greatly reduced. Therefore, Xie Bulo had the ability to do this. Unless it's absolutely necessary, I won't let him kill anyone. Don't worry. I've often taught you that you need to live up to your own hearts when doing things. As long as your hearts are calm, your actions are upright, and you are not bewitched by Spirit Lord Yu Meng, there won't be any problems. Feng Haochen's words were much nicer than Xie Bulo's. He had been teaching Mu Yu and the others the correct values, hoping that they would be able to distinguish themselves from Spirit Lord Yu Meng and become a normal human. "Xiao Shui, you have to be careful," said Mu Yu. The four of them had been receiving Feng Haochen's teachings and cultivated the Dust Fall Sutra. They knew how to achieve a tranquil state of mind, but Xiao Shui was different from them. Mu Yu didn't know if Xiao Shui could achieve the same state of mind as them. Xiao Shui nodded nervously. Controlling Spirit Lord Yu Meng in her body was still a little difficult for her. However, she wasn't an ordinary person. The demon race's Azure Dragon Demon King was an extremely powerful existence. He had taught Xiao Shui some ways to deal with him. Xie Bulo picked up a rock, a piece of metal, a leaf, and a drop of water. He used his spiritual energy to envelop the pulsating magma. Then, a powerful repulsive force came from these five things, as if they couldn't wait to return to their original positions. Once something in the ethereal spirit land was destroyed, it would quickly recover and return to its original position. The powerful ethereal spirit array ensured the integrity of this place, and Xie Bulo was using his profound cultivation to temporarily resist the recovery power of this array. Setting up the nine heavens devil sealing array required the help of the five elements here. "You only know how to use me as a coolie." Xie Bulo needed to use his own cultivation to temporarily refine these five things. His entire body surged with a gray, evil aura. The evil aura rolled over, covering the sky and the earth, covering the five elements. However, at this moment, countless stone peaks suddenly lit up with tyrannical array patterns. The array patterns were like dancing golden fairies, rushing towards the five elements that were trapped by Xie Bulo. It was obvious that the ethereal spirit array wanted to take back the five elements that were taken away from them. Xie Bulo coldly snorted. His right hand flashed with a red light, and Lu Xie's entire finger turned red. The dark red evil aura rushed towards the array patterns with a strange whistling sound. When the golden array patterns met the red evil aura, they seemed to be suppressed. The array patterns were originally ancient inscriptions. After being contaminated by Lu Xie, the golden ancient inscriptions were immediately dyed red. A pair of evil eyes actually appeared on each of the ancient inscriptions. Xiebulo's Lu Xie had the ability to demonize anything. His cultivation had already reached the level where he could demonize array patterns. It was truly terrifying. Mu Yu and the other four looked at each other. Regardless of whether it was Xiebulo's evil aura or the ancient golden array patterns, the terrifying aura emitted by them was something that they couldn't compare to. In front of Xiebulo, they felt like ants at the bottom of a mountain. They could only tremble in fear. Feng Haochen and Ku Mu were already standing in midair. They were using their spiritual energy to carve the array patterns. Ku Mu's arm danced, and the purple light extreme jade appeared beside him. A majestic amount of spiritual energy rushed towards Ku Mu's body. Streams of white spiritual energy appeared on Ku Mu's fingertip. They were like thin lines that sprayed out. Those spiritual energy lines crisscrossed with each other in an orderly manner. When they connected together, they formed a regular shape. Feng Haochen's right hand's index finger and middle finger were together. His fingertips were shining with a golden light. He kept carving ancient inscriptions in the air. Each and every mysterious inscription was formed by spiritual energy. After each inscription was formed, it rippled in the air with the wind and surrounded Feng Haochen. Feng Haochen's left hand guided those inscriptions, and they slowly merged with the array patterns that Ku Mu was carving. The three of them had a clear division of labor, but they worked together with great tacit understanding. The three of them were all experts in setting up arrays, so they wouldn't make any mistakes. The ninth Heaven's Demon Sealing Array was a formation that was deliberately targeted at the Yuman. When the war between the human race and the Yuman broke out, the human race relied on it to win. However, this formation wasn't something that everyone could set up. There weren't many people in the human race who were proficient in formations. Only the formation masters of the formation faction could be considered to have some understanding of the Tao of formations. This was a long process. Mu Yu and the others couldn't help at all. They could only watch from the side. At the same time, they also understood how complicated this formation was. Ku Mu took nearly 10 hours to carve the embryonic form of the Ninth Heaven's Demon Sealing Array. He was only at the cultivation level of the Jindan period. Consuming such a large amount of spiritual energy was too much for him. If it weren't for the countless pills that Mu Yu had on him to replenish his spiritual energy, as well as the purple light extreme jade, Ku Mu probably wouldn't have been able to hold on. Feng Haochen didn't show any signs of depletion of spiritual energy. This was because he could borrow the power of the heaven and earth formation and transfer the spiritual energy of the heaven and earth formation to himself. After carving the embryonic form, he needed to continuously perfect the details. This took another 10 hours. Feng Haochen was also constantly carving the inscriptions. He was probably carving millions of inscriptions. The amount of work required was huge, and he couldn't afford to make any mistakes. The complexity of the Ninth Heaven's Demon Sealing Array was beyond anyone's imagination. Xiebulo was already surrounded by inscriptions. The ethereal formation was becoming more and more oppressive to him. He wanted to take back the 5 elements that had been taken away from him. Many of the inscriptions had been demonized by his 6 evils. However, the demonized inscriptions would soon break free and merge back into the ethereal formation. Then, more inscriptions would appear one after another. Mu Yu, come here. Help me perfect the inscriptions. Ku Mu looked at Xiebulo's progress. He knew that Xiebulo was almost done, but he was still far from forming the formation. If he couldn't form the formation, then Feng Haochen's inscriptions wouldn't be able to be completely placed into the formation. The two of them had to finish setting up the formation before Ciebulo. If Ciebulo finished setting up the formation before they finished, then everything would be for naught. Muyu quickly came to Kumu's side. Looking at the ninth heaven's demon ceiling array, which had a diameter of about 500 meters, he was extremely shocked. Although he had learned a lot about formations from Kumu after seeing the ninth heaven's demon ceiling array, he realized that the formations he had set up before were just child's play. "You taught Muyu the formation?" Feng Haochen frowned, but his hands didn't stop. Kumu glanced at him and said, "Wouldn't it be ridiculous if my disciple didn't learn the formation? Both of my masters are formation experts, but my disciple doesn't know the formation. I don't want him to go out and embarrass me." Feng Haochen shook his head helplessly. "You know that I didn't teach them the formation because Spirit Lord Yumeng would occasionally pry into their memories when he resuscitation. That way, after Spirit Lord Yumeng learned our formation knowledge and figured out the weakness of the ninth heaven's demon ceiling array, it would be useless against them." Kumu snorted. "I believe in my disciple." Muyu felt warm in his heart. Kumu had always been straightforward. Although he often scolded Muyu and the back of Muyu's head had been slapped thousands of times by Kumu, Muyu never cared about those insignificant things. This was because Kumu had long since treated Muyu as his own child. Feng Haochen sighed. "This isn't a matter of whether you believe in him or not. This is to protect their safety. Moreover, our attainments in array formations are among the best in the cultivation world. If Spirit Lord Yumeng obtains them all, in the future, when we fight against the Yumeng Devil Clan, basically all the arrays used to restrain them will be ineffective." Muyu didn't blame Feng Haochen, because Feng Haochen's worries were also correct. If he had learned all of his master's formation knowledge, including the ninth heaven's demon ceiling array, based on the fact that he had lost control a few times now, Spirit Lord Yumeng would definitely have understood the weakness of the ninth heaven's demon ceiling array. In that case, Muyu would also be in danger. Kumu pursed his lips. He found that Feng Haochen was right every time, so he reluctantly said, "Fortunately, you're a little lazy and didn't seriously learn the formation. You don't need to understand the principles of this formation. Just follow my instructions." Muyu didn't have any temper at all. Now it seemed that learning the formation was a mistake. However, it was fortunate that he had only learned a little about the formation. It might be effective in dealing with some simple maze and illusion formations, but for a complex formation like the ninth heaven's demon ceiling array, without anyone to guide him, it was unrealistic for him to rely on himself to understand it. The others hadn't learned the formation before, so they couldn't help. Muyu listened to Kumu's instructions and helped him perfect the lines. He tried his best not to think about how the lines he drew with his spiritual power would affect the ninth heaven's demon ceiling array. He also didn't try to figure out the use of every line he saw. He tried his best to forget the knowledge of the formation and just be a quick assistant. With Muyu's help, the progress of the ninth heaven's demon ceiling array suddenly sped up. The speed at which Feng Haochen injected inscriptions into the formation also began to increase. After more than a day, the ninth heaven's demon ceiling array finally took shape. As Kumu drew the last line, Feng Haochen injected the last inscription into the formation. The ninth heaven's demon ceiling array suddenly trembled and emitted a dazzling white light that shot into the sky. An ancient aura spread out from the ninth heaven's demon ceiling array. This aura seemed to come from ancient times and made people's hearts palpitate. Muyu and the others suddenly felt uneasy. Chapter 331. The 5 elements that Ciebulo had extracted were slowly refined by the evil energy. The evil energy invaded the runes, causing the ethereal formation to mistakenly believe that the 5 elements had returned to their original positions. The golden runes no longer rushed out of the ethereal land to forcibly seize the 5 elements. The foundation of the 9 heavens, sealing demon formation, was the 5 element. The 5 elements were closely related to the entire ethereal land. Because the 5 elements were forcibly taken away, the ethereal land had always wanted to take them back. Therefore, a huge amount of energy would surge out to tear the 5 elements apart. This energy was cleverly used by the 3 formation grandmasters as the foundation of the 9 heavens, sealing demon formation, providing a strong foundation of spiritual energy for the formation. Siebulo waved his hand, and the 5 elements slowly entered the white 9 heavens, sealing demon formation. When Kumu was carving the runes, he had already left a place for the 5 elements. After the 5 elements combined with the 9 heavens, sealing demon formation, the entire formation trembled once again. All the lines of spiritual energy started to move rapidly, and the entire formation was covered by the 5 colors of gold, green, blue, red, and yellow. Muyu's heart skipped a beat. He vaguely felt that something was struggling in his body. An indescribable feeling of resentment rose from the bottom of his heart. He wanted to quickly escape from this ethereal land. It was as if the 9 heavens sealing demon formation was some kind of terrifying forbidden area. It made him feel very uncomfortable. However, Siebulo waved his hand, and before they could do anything, the 5 of them had already been sent into the 9 heavens, sealing demon formation. Guard your consciousness. Don't be bewitched. Feng Haochen's voice was like a loud bell ringing in their ears, waking them up from their anger. Feng Haochen sat cross-legged in midair. He shouted at Siebulo and Kumu, "You two, protect me. When Spirit Lord Yumeng wakes up, I need to do my best to maintain this formation. No matter what happens, don't be too anxious. Especially you, Siebulo." Feng Haochen gave Siebulo a warning look. Then, he closed his eyes and fell into silence. His entire body was covered by a white rune, isolating him from the outside world. However, his hands didn't stop. Countless runes continued to appear and merge into the 9 heavens, sealing demon formation. Feng Haochen was the eye of the entire 9 heavens, sealing devil array. He needed to focus on sealing off his senses to support the entire 9 heavens, sealing devil array. This array formation was closely related to him. In order to prevent interference from the 5 people in the array formation, he even cut off his own detection of the 5 people in the array formation. Within the 9 heavens, sealing demon formation, Muyu discovered that his entire body was enveloped by a green light. Above his head was an insignificant leaf, but it was this leaf that contained boundless power. It was as if a colorful world was hidden within this leaf. It was full of vitality, thriving, and surging like a surging tide. Something in his heart was roaring. It was as if it wanted to break free of its cage, but the presence of the leaf was so frightening that the thing in his heart didn't dare fight it. "If it wasn't for me back then, would you have been able to survive?" A cold face appeared in Muyu's mind. It was exactly the same as Muyu, but the presence was completely different. Spirit Lord Mu Yumeng had turned into Muyu's appearance. "Master said that I shouldn't have been able to survive. I am just a vessel for you. But now I want to get rid of the identity of a vessel," Muyu said calmly. In his heart, he was already silently operating the Dust Fall Heart Sutra. "Don't you want the ability to control life and death? If you seal me, you will never be able to use it again. In the blink of an eye, you will regret it." Spirit Lord Mu Yumeng stared at him. "I don't need the ability to control life and death in the blink of an eye. I don't need to control the life and death of others. Everyone has their own destiny. You humans are all hypocrites. You always say things that don't mean. If you seal me, Jian Ying and Chen Feng's undying body will one day be taken away by the guardian of the Third Palace. You can only fight against the people of the Third Palace by borrowing my power." Spirit Lord Mu Yumeng's eyes flashed with a crazy green light. "I have already found the Netherworld Grass. The Netherworld Grass will help him recover his cultivation." "Netherworld Grass? Haha. You are too naive. Do you think that the guardian of the third palace did not consider the matter of the netherworld grass? The method you came up with only needs a year. In this year, many things can happen. I have fought with the people of the third palace for thousands of years. Every guardian of the third palace is selfish. But that does not mean that they are simple-minded. They will always pay attention to their own interests. Do you think that the third palace will not notice Jian Ying Qinfeng's actions? Spirit Lord Mu Yumeng mocked. Mu Yu's heart trembled. He knew that Spirit Lord Mu Yumeng was right. The third palace knew everything about the third palace like the back of their hand. The guardians were also concerned about Feng Haochen's undying body. They would definitely not let Feng Haochen recover his cultivation so easily. Master naturally has his ways. You don't need to worry. You are human. I am a human. I will definitely fight against you to the end. Mu Yu scattered all his thoughts. Spirit Lord Mu Yumeng laughed wildly. What is the human race that you want to protect? Is the human race worthy of your protection? Many images suddenly appeared in Mu Yu's mind. These were all his unpleasant memories. They were also the evil side of human nature. He saw the two disciples of the Jiuhua school killing the pregnant flame horse for the sake of a demon spirit. Then, they killed the martial brothers that he spent all his time with for the sake of a demon spirit. He saw the gray disciples of the Jiuhua school being beaten and scolded by cultivators. He saw the cultivators that were killed by Deacon Sun. He saw how Deacon Sun stood up for the gray disciples but was betrayed by the gray disciples and almost lost his life. He saw how Gui Xianyue killed 49 Jindan period cultivators in order to find Jian Ying Qinfeng. He also saw how Gui Xuanyue's physical body was destroyed and his twin was killed. In order to not be punished by the Ghost Lord, he resolutely waved his butcher's knife at his biological father and forcibly turned his father into a twin. He saw the ugly faces of the cultivators of the floating immortal island fighting for the dragon vine. They did not hesitate to fight for the dragon vine. Many nascent soul cultivators besieged him in the Jindan period. They did not treat his life as a human being at all. He saw how Shi Minghui and Shi Dengtian schemed to kill him. They even did not hesitate to tamper with the teleportation jade pendant. They wanted to trap Mu Yu in the second heaven forever. After Mu Yu escaped, they sent Su Zai to kill Deadwood. He saw how every cultivator of the human race only dared to bully those who were weaker than them. They were arrogant in front of the weak and humble in front of the strong. He saw how the evil sects indulged their bodies in the hell on earth, and how these bodies were usually very high and mighty elders. He saw how mortal emperors poisoned their own father and brothers to death in the fight for the throne. He saw how human brothers and sisters drove their elderly parents out of the house after fighting for the family property and made them sleep on the street. No one was willing to take care of their parents when they grew old. He saw how vicious wives forced their mother-in-law to eat leftovers and sleep in a pig cage. He saw how greedy shopkeepers took away the wages of hard-working workers for no reason. He saw how landlords forcibly took over the land and demolished the houses of farmers. Countless ugly faces flashed through Mu Yu's mind. Some of them were his own experiences, but most of them were the conflicts between the human race that Spirit Lord Mu Yumeng had seen himself. These bloody scenes depicted the ugly face of human nature. It was so shocking that Mu Yu deeply experienced the dark side of the world. Are these the human race that you want to protect? Is there a need for them to exist? Do they deserve to live? Bitter ridicule echoed in Mu Yu's mind for a long time. Spirit Lord Mu Yumeng had fought with the human race for so long that he was familiar with the dark side of human nature. He knew that Mu Yu advocated peace and did not like killing. Therefore, he transmitted all the memories of the human race killing each other to Mu Yu's mind. There are always many unfairness in the world. However, the human race does not exist because of these unfairness. It is because we have feelings. The thousands of bloody scenes did not waver Mu Yu. His belief was very firm. He understood what he had, and also understood what the human race had. Grandpa Village Chief knew that he had Yu Meng's ability, but chose to believe him. Deacon soon protected Mu Yu, who was a gray disciple, in front of the high and mighty immortal master. Feng Haochen taught him calmly. Qingyan protected his junior brother. Lan Ling was stubborn towards Luoshang. Tian Ran chose not to acknowledge her father in front of him so that she would not cause trouble for him. Pajian was willing to give up his life for the woman he loved and was willing to give up his heart for Yu Dai. Kumu was willing to save Feng Haochen for Miao Yan. Ling Bingxue had waited bitterly for Kumu for several decades. Feng Haochen was unwilling to see the person he loved grow old and would rather give up his immortal life. The scenes of love were like warm suns that melted the ugly human nature. Family, friendship, the care of an elder brother, the protection of an elder, the persistence of love. These were all things that Spirit Lord Mu Yumeng could not understand. They had fought with the human race for thousands of years, but in the end, they still did not understand what the human race relied on to continue their race. Boom! The Nine Heavens demon sealing array suddenly erupted with an ancient aura. The 5 elements that Xie Bulo had refined intertwined with each other, forming rings of 5 colored inscriptions that pulsed and fused into each person's body. The 5 elements depended on each other and restrained each other, turning their bodies into balanced elemental bodies. Spirit Lord Mu Yumeng let out an unwilling roar. The 5 people's bodies were constantly fused with by the array patterns. Each of their bodies lacked 4 elements, and these 4 elements were slowly being replenished by the 9 Heavens demon sealing array. Although it was impossible for them to become like normal people, it was enough to make Spirit Lord Mu Yumeng unable to control them. However, at this moment, a mournful cry rang out. Qiao Shui's body trembled uncontrollably. She cried out in pain, "No! I'm not a monster! Don't kill me!" Tears had already flowed down her cheeks. She saw her past. The human race had abandoned her, and even her own parents did not like her. She was disheartened. That was her most helpless moment, but Spirit Lord Shui Yumeng had evoked her sorrow. Qiao Shui's sobbing alarmed the others. Her emotions seemed to be magnified by the 9 Heavens demon sealing array. Everyone could feel her sorrow. Mu Yu intuitively felt an indescribable sorrow in his heart. He felt as if he had lost something, and his heart was empty. Mu Yu knew what he had lost. He had been an orphan since he was young, and he did not understand what his parents' love was. When he was 2 years old, his mother chose to leave without saying goodbye, leaving him to the village chief. He envied other children who could act spoiled in their parents' embrace, but he could not. Although the village chief loved him very much, there were many things that the village chief could not give him. He would often sit at his door in a daze, hoping that his mother would come back to pick him up. He did not even want to live in the village chief's house. However, day after day, year after year, no one came to pick him up. He was an orphan who had been abandoned by his parent. He buried these feelings in the bottom of his heart because he was very optimistic. However, today, these feelings erupted like a volcano. They all surged into his heart, making him feel incomparably sad. Why would there be parents who abandoned their children? Mu Yu thought in a daze. He did not seem to have any attachment to life. He felt very sleepy and wanted nothing more than to sleep and forget all the sorrow. You will never understand this girl's pitiful past. I've taken over her consciousness so many times that it's hard to believe. Chapter 332. Jianing, Chunfeng, Xiang, ageless. Long time no see. Qiao Shui stood up from the array. Her bright blue eyes looked at Xie Bulo and Feng Haochen, who were outside the 9 Heavens demon sealing array. Xie Bulo and Ku Mu's expressions changed. Something unexpected had happened. Yes. We haven't seen each other for more than 100 years, right? I heard that Jian Ying and Chun Feng's undying body is coveted by that guy from the third palace. Why don't you humans believe in yourselves? Xiang Nan suddenly opened his eyes. His eyes were filled with yellow light. They were heavy and thick, looking very strange. Qiao Shui's loss of control made the others feel the same way. Xiang Nan was the first to be affected. Both of their consciousnesses had been taken over by Spirit Lord Yu Meng. It's a pity that Jian Ying and Chun Feng seem to be on guard against me. They cut off the detection of these 5 people. My ability doesn't seem to work on him. Otherwise, I might be able to affect his state of mind. Xian Ming looked regretfully at Feng Haochen, who was covered by array patterns. Xian Ming and Hutu, you two are in a hurry to die. Xie Bulow's 6 evils were filled with evil energy. The 5 spirit lords Yu Meng had their own names. They were Wood God Gomang, Fire God Zhurong, Earth God Hutu, Metal God Rushu, and Water God Xianming. Humans usually called them Spirit Lords Yu Meng. Apart from Feng Haochen and Xie Bulow, who knew more about Yuman, no one else knew their exact names. Xie Bulow's body was filled with evil energy and killing intent. However, Xianming just smiled disdainfully, as if he didn't see anything. None of us can be killed. Why do you have to threaten us? However, Qiao Shui and Xiang Nan can die. At worst, we'll go through another reincarnation. However, apart from Jian Ying and Chun Feng, I don't think you can force us to reincarnate into humans. Xian Ming's voice was pleasant, as if he were singing. Xie Bulow, Feng Haochen told us not to be rash. Ku Mu stopped Xie Bulow, who was about to attack. He frowned. Although Xiang Nan and Qiao Shui's consciousnesses had been taken away, it didn't mean that there was no way to save them. The 9 Heavens Devil Sealing formation was still incomplete, and Feng Haochen was still maintaining the operation of the formation. Everything depended on the 5 people in the formation. Sword Shadow and Chun Feng have made a good plan. They forcibly sent us into the human reincarnation. Now we can only curl up in this small, dirty human body. Disgusting. Huda walked to Luo Shang, put her hand on Luo Shang's shoulder and said, Zhu Rong, why don't you wake up? Luo Shang's face turned red, but he didn't open his eyes. He was still struggling to hold on, fighting against the fire god Zhurong in his body. I have to say, Jian Ying and Chun Feng have taught their disciples quite well. It's a pity that we didn't find Qiao Shui. Otherwise, we might not have had the chance to come out today. It wasn't easy for Hutu to come out. If Qiao Shui hadn't lost control and infected Xiang Nan with her sadness, Xiang Nan wouldn't have lost his consciousness to Hutu. So what if you 5 annoying fellows came out? Do you think you can run away from the empty land? Xie Bulow snorted. Xian Ming stretched her body, looked at the others, then fixed her eyes on Feng Haochen, who was trying his best to keep the formation isolated from the outside world, and said, Sword Shadow and Chun Feng are so lucky for the humankind. Unfortunately, there are always some short-sighted human beings among you, who tried everything to steal his immortal body. The humankind has already given up on Jian Ying and Chun Feng. Xie Bulow, why don't you choose to join us? If we join hands, it will be easy for us to bring down the threefold palace. Xie Bulow said with a fierce look, Jian Ying and Chun Feng will take care of the threefold palace people. You don't need to worry about us. I was careless. I forgot that you can infect people with your emotions. The scariest thing about Xianming, who was known as the affectionate being, wasn't that she could control water and ice. Instead, she could magnify all kinds of emotions in the hearts of human beings, and destroy the humankind from the inside out. She could keenly sense the sadness and happiness in people's hearts. As long as she wanted to, she could even bring up the deepest memories in people's hearts, making them unable to extricate themselves. Xian Ming's ability was called Death of Love. It was famous for playing with human emotions. Humans had many complicated emotions, such as happiness, anger, sorrow, and joy. Once emotions were magnified, A person's mind would be occupied by all kinds of emotions, which would endlessly impact the person's spiritual world. In the end, it would cause the person to collapse. Looking at your smile, it seems like you still believe that they can resist my death of love? Xianming walked to Qingyan's side and stretched out her slender fingers to gently stroke Qingyan's face. Qingyan's entire body became somewhat painful. I like to evoke memories in people. This Qingyan seems to like a girl called Qing Mei a lot. Back then, in order to protect his master, he resolutely broke up with Qing Mei. He didn't reveal his great sadness. What a strong-willed guy. However, I like to evoke such heart-wrenching memories in him. When Xianming's fingertips brushed across Qingyan's face, she could clearly see the emotions in Qingyan's heart. Doesn't Rushu hate talking about emotions the most? Why did he choose an affectionate human brat as his body? Huda sized up Qingyan in confusion. Jian Ying and Chen Feng are both our love saint old prince. How can his disciple not be? Xie Bulo unhappily glared at Feng Haochen, whose eyes were tightly shut. Unfortunately, Feng Haochen didn't hear what he was saying. Xie Bulo didn't like emotions. He believed that too much emotions would become a burden and would be restricted. This wasn't in line with the carefree style of the heretic. And this Mu Yu. He casually took liberties with Qiao Shui and stole her heart. He's so stupid. His EQ is really low. Xianming walked to Mu Yu's side and sneered. Although she revealed a disdainful smile, her voice was still like the sound of nature. It was really strange how she did it. Why aren't you two scramming back? Xie Bulo shouted. Xianming lazily looked at Xie Bulo. Xie Bulo, why don't you just kill this girl and let me enter the cycle of reincarnation? Then I'll reincarnate into the body of my Shui Yumeng clansman. In the future, we'll fight again. This will save us a lot of trouble, right? Don't worry. If you kill me this time, I won't fight back. Huda smiled honestly and then frowned. The little bastard in my body is struggling. Get down. You just have to mourn for your dead mother. Feng Haochen understood his disciples very well. He knew that Mu Yu and the others wouldn't be easily controlled by Spirit Lord Yumeng. However, Qiao Shui's situation had changed. Qiao Shui had been abandoned by the human race when she was young. Her family had driven her away. Her heart was very weak. After Xianming took over her consciousness, Qiao Shui's emotions were magnified and affected Xiang Nan, who had experienced the pain of losing his life. However, Qingyan, Luo Shang, and Mu Yu's minds were still relatively strong. They were still fighting against Spirit Lord Yumeng. The Nine Heavens demon sealing formation had gradually entered the bodies of Qingyan and the others. As long as they were given more time, they would be able to endure it. If Xie Bulo rashly attacked Xianming now, he would break the formation and cause irreparable damage to the others. The only thing they could do now was wait. Wait until the Nine Heavens demon sealing formation was completely engraved into their bodies. If they could seal Spirit Lord Yumeng, that would count as one. As for the rest that they couldn't seal, they could only prepare for the worst. Swoosh! The left side of Luo Shang's body suddenly burst into flames. His hair instantly turned a dazzling red. He opened his eyes, which were flickering. His left eye was flickering with raging flames, while his right eye was still showing Luo Shang's cold expression. This little bastard won't let me out. Zhurong had seized half of Luo Shang's body. His voice carried a whistling sound. He seemed flustered and exasperated. You shouldn't have come out. Luo Shang's right eye was very cold. The right side of his body was trying hard to suppress Zhurong. However, Fire God Zhurong was extraordinary. Luo Shang couldn't completely suppress Zhurong. Xianming walked over and smiled. Brother Zhurong, do you need me to help you? Specks of blue light appeared from Xianming's body and gently covered the right side of Luo Shang's body. A trace of panic and guilt appeared in Luo Shang's cold right eye. Then, Zhurong's flames instantly covered the right side of Luo Shang's body and successfully seized it. I hate the smell of guilt. This kid makes me feel uncomfortable, Zhurong said with a hoarse voice. Luo Shang was a very energetic and cold guy. He was the first to leave the Moyun mountain range. After coming to the third continent, he seemed to be very low-key. The young talents of the floating immortal island didn't know him, but the people of the million-star firm invited him. No one knew what he had experienced. I don't like these inscriptions. Rushu stared at the faintly discernible golden inscriptions on his arm. Although they had taken control of their bodies, the Nine Heavens Fiend sealing array was still being maintained by Feng Haochen. There was no way for them to walk out of the array formation. Even their strength was sealed. Resuscitation was the same for Spirit Lord Yumeng. Ignoring the fact that their strength was greatly reduced, even if they were at their peak, they wouldn't be able to use their full strength in this ethereal land. They were all waiting for the Nine Heavens Fiend sealing array. As long as they still took control of their bodies after the array ended, the Nine Heavens Fiend sealing array would lose its effect. Strange, what is Gomang doing? I remember that Gomang has been resuscitated more than me. He should be recovering faster. Why hasn't he finished off this kid? Hotu circled Mu Yu's body in puzzlement. Every resuscitation would allow them to recover a large portion of their vitality and gradually adapt to the body they were residing in. If he woke up frequently, it would be easy for him to seize control of the body, causing the owner of the body to never wake up again. Qiao Shui and Mu Yu had received the most resuscitation from Spirit Lord Yumeng, so they were in more danger than the others. He will wake up, there is no rush. Xian Ming deliberately looked at Ku Mu and Xie Bulo provocatively. Although Xian Ming couldn't resonate with the surrounding water elements, her goal wasn't to escape. She was deliberately angering them and forcing them to take action to interfere with the Nine Heavens Fiend sealing array's smooth progress. Xie Bulo wasn't a gentle person. He angrily shouted and wanted to kill Xian Ming, but Ku Mu kept stopping him. Wait. Feng Haochen is still maintaining the Nine Heavens Fiend sealing array, don't cause trouble. Ku Mu shouted. As long as one of them could succeed, it would be great. Even if they couldn't, Ku Mu would never let Xie Bulo kill Mu Yu. Feng Haochen's original intention of taking Mu Yu and the other three as his disciples was never to kill them. Instead, he wanted to rely on the four of them to suppress Spirit Lord Yumeng and prevent him from continuing to wreak havoc in the human world. However, Xie Bulo didn't care so much. He had always been very straightforward. Xian Ming went to Qingyan's side again and poured the blue light into Qingyan's body. Qingyan's body trembled violently. An indescribable sadness appeared on his face, as if he was recalling some painful memories. Then, he opened his eyes. However, his eyes flickered with a cold metallic luster, without any human emotions. Chapter 333. The four spirit lords Yumeng stared at Xie Bulo and Ku Mu Changqing with interest. Their expressions were full of ridicule. They appeared with the appearance of Qingyan and the others, but their auras had undergone earth-shattering changes. They were no longer the same four people. Ku Mu Changqing, are you sure we want to continue waiting? I already told Jian Yingchen that the ninth heaven sealing devil formation wouldn't succeed so easily. If his mind wasn't firm, how could he suppress those 5 bastards? When he sent those 5 bastards into the human race's reincarnation, I was very opposed. After living for so many years, does he still not understand human nature? Xie Bulo said impatiently. Mu Yu is different from them. Moreover, Feng Haochen never fights an unprepared battle. Even if he fails, he will have other ways to remedy it. Ku Mu glanced at the anxious Xie Bulo and snorted. His gaze fell on Mu Yu, who was still sitting cross-legged on the ground. Mu Yu was the only one who hadn't lost control of his body. As long as Mu Yu persevered, there was still room to turn things around. Mu Yu, will she really be different from them? Do you trust him that much? Xian Ming heard Ku Mu's words and laughed loudly. She leisurely strolled to Mu Yu's side. Xian Ming's blue brilliance had already covered Mu Yu's entire body. Mu Yu's body was trembling. His face was filled with fear, anger, and sorrow. However, he still gritted his teeth and persevered. No one knew what was going on in his body. This kid has the most emotions. He won't be able to persevere for long. Xian Ming chuckled. She could clearly sense the chaotic emotions in Mu Yu's mind. It was only a matter of time before they were suppressed by Gomang. Mu Yu, don't let your imagination run wild. Do you hear me? Ku Mu anxiously shouted at Mu Yu. He's not imagining things. He just longs for the love of his parents. TSK. Your mother abandoned you when you were only 2 years old. It's really a pitiful thing. Xian Ming extended her slender finger and stroked Mu Yu's cheek. Do you crave the love of a father and a mother? What a joke. Your father and mother don't want you. Why do you wait for them? Your mother won't come back. Just be an orphan and be sad forever. The dark blue eyes actually reflected the memory fragments in Mu Yu's mind. She could clearly see Mu Yu's memories at this moment. After that, her voice echoed in Mu Yu's mind, causing Mu Yu, who was in the midst of her memories, to be filled with confusion. Am I really an unwanted child? Mu Yu had already forgotten what his mother looked like. Ever since he was 2 years old, his mother had left while he was sleeping soundly. He could only vaguely remember her back view, the back view that made him panic. At this moment, Mu Yu was sitting in front of the threshold of his hut in Flowing Water Village, staring at the entrance of the village in a daze. He didn't know what he was looking at, but he hoped that the back he wanted to see would appear there. However, a child walked in front of Mu Yu. You are an annoying fellow. Even your parents don't want you. Who else would want you? Mu Yu's childhood playmate, De Zhuang, appeared in front of him. De Zhuang's eyes flashed with an imperceptible blue light. This blue light disappeared in a flash. Mu Yu didn't notice anything unusual. Grandpa Village Chief wants me, Mu Yu weakly explained. He felt very disappointed. He didn't know why, but he used to cover up all his memories of his mother and deliberately tried to forget these things. However, today these things poured into his mind and made him very sad. Come on. The village chief only took you in because he felt sorry for you. Do you think the village chief will like someone who doesn't even want his parents? De Zhuang unscrupulously mocked him. His voice was sharp and ear-piercing, making Mu Yu's mood even worse. Mu Yu was very sad. He didn't even know why he was sad. He inexplicably believed De Zhuang's words. He believed that he was a child that no one wanted, that no one loved, that no one cared about. You like Lan Ling but Lan Ling doesn't like you. You like Tianran, but you don't have the ability to protect her. Xiao Shui likes you, but you rejected her. You are a useless coward. It's a mistake for you to live until now, isn't it? De Zhuang laughed. The blue light in his eyes was still flashing, but the disdain in his voice didn't lessen. But Master wants me to. Mu Yu wanted to grasp at the last straw. Feng Haochen only accepted you as a disciple because of Spirit Lord Yu Meng in your body. If you were nothing, would he have chosen to teach you? Kumu is only using you. His ultimate goal is Miao Yuyan, not you. De Zhuang's laughter was so arrogant that it made Mu Yu tremble. He's right. You are indeed a child that no one wants. Gomang's figure appeared in Mu Yu's body. Gomang and Mu Yu looked exactly the same, but his eyes were a ball of green mist that constantly rotated. Mu Yu lowered his head. He realized that De Zhuang was right. Feng Haochen only accepted him as a disciple because of Spirit Lord Yu Meng in his body. If he wasn't Spirit Lord Yu Meng's vessel, then he was nothing. Feng Haochen wouldn't even look at him, nor would he teach him any sword technique. Kumu only chose to teach Mu Yu his Tao of medicine for Miaoyan. He had been using Mu Yu from the beginning. Kumu had a grudge against Feng, so how could he trust his enemy's disciple? Endless sorrow enveloped Mu Yu. He had already forgotten where he was. He only felt terrible and wanted to cry, outside the 9 heavens sealing formation. You can't even hold on to the last one? Then I won't hold back. Xie Bulo stroked his 6 evils. Xian Ming's ability was to infinitely magnify a person's emotions. Even if you felt guilty because you accidentally knocked over a bowl, she could magnify this guilt and torment your heart, causing you to choose to end your life because of this guilt. Everyone has something in their heart that is worth protecting. Mu Yu will definitely hold on. Kumu thought of Mu Yu's past and clenched his fist. Mu Yu had never been loved by his parents since he was young. He had always yearned for this kind of emotion. Although he had always been optimistic and buried this emotion deep in his heart, once this emotion was triggered by Xianming, it was easy for him to lose himself. Xie Bulo said fiercely, I don't care what other people have in their hearts. Once this kid is controlled, I will personally end the lives of these 5 people. You can't stop me. Even Jian Ying and Chen Feng can't stop me. Kumu angrily stared at Xie Bulo. Xie Bulo had always harbored a deep killing intent towards Mu Yu's group. He wasn't like Kumu and Feng, who chose to believe in Mu Yu's group. Instead, he treated Mu Yu's group as an anomaly. Although Xie Bulo's style of doing things was very strange, when it came to Yuman's matters, his goal was very clear. He wouldn't give Yuman any chances. Kumu looked at Feng, who was maintaining the 9 heavens sealing formation. Although Feng had warned Xie Bulo not to act blindly without thinking, with Xie Bulo's personality, how could he listen to Feng's words? Mu Yu's body suddenly shook. He shouted loudly, and his entire body was wrapped in a green light. Then, he opened his eyes as well. His eyes were filled with a strange green mist that spun faintly. It was like a breathtaking cloud, but also like a whirlpool of nebula. Then, the green fog slowly drifted away, and his eyes were covered with 2 different colors. His left eye was filled with white light, and his right eye was covered with black light. Gomang, you are a bit slow, Xian Ming said with a smile. Fortunately, I'm not too late. Gomang faintly smiled. He stood up and looked at the 3 people outside the 9 heavens sealing formation. He said, Xie Bulo, you have been waiting for me to be the last one, right? How about it? Have you made up your mind to end the lives of these 5 people? Mu Yu's control over his body had actually been seized by Gomang. The 5 Spirit Lord Yumeng were completely resuscitation. The killing intent on Xie Bulo's body was getting stronger and stronger. He coldly stared at Feng and then looked at Kumu. Now that their consciousness has been seized by Spirit Lord Yumeng, the 9 heavens sealing formation is about to end. Once it ends, the 9 heavens sealing formation will seal the consciousness of these 5 people. They will not be able to wake up. Do you still want to stop me? Xie Bulo raised his right hand. Evil energy filled the sky, and he was ready to kill these 5 people. There is still a chance that they will wake up. If you want to make a move, you should do it after the 9 heavens sealing formation ends. Kumu stood in front of Xie Bulo. What? Your most trusted Mu Yu's consciousness has already been seized. You still don't want to give up? Xie Bulo pushed Kumu away. 6 evils' evil energy burst out and blasted toward the 5 people inside the 9 heavens sealing formation. However, Kumu rushed toward the 9 heavens sealing formation. He didn't care about the others, but Mu Yu's life was the most important to him. In the past, he had always thought that Mu Yu was only a tool to be used. However, as time passed, he realized that he had already treated Mu Yu as his own child. From the moment Mu Yu appeared in the Pill Cauldron sect, Kumu knew what Mu Yu meant to him. He would not allow Xie Bulo to kill Mu Yu. Are you crazy? Xie Bulo angrily shouted. A violent evil energy swept toward Kumu. He wanted to grab Kumu back. However, Kumu's fingers flickered and countless formation patterns appeared from his hand. The purple light extreme jade released a powerful spiritual energy and blocked Siebulo's evil energy. Bastard! You actually dare to use formation techniques to fight against me? Siebulo was extremely angry. His cultivation had already reached the peak. Even the 8 sect masters were not his match. However, Kumu was also a formation master like him. Their attainments in formation techniques had already reached the peak. Although Kumu had lost his cultivation, he was still able to use the purple light extreme jade to activate a powerful formation technique to fight against Siebulo. The purple light extreme jade is indeed a good item. However, I want to see if you can block it a second time. Siebulo's evil energy attacked again. However, Kumu had already fallen into the 9th heaven's demon sealing array. His palm struck the array patterns on the ground of the 9th heaven's demon sealing array. Countless array patterns burst forth, forming a powerful spiritual energy. It met Siebulo's evil energy and shattered it once again. How is this possible? The core of the 9 heavens sealing formation is Jian Ing Chen Feng. How are you able to control this formation? Siebulo turned his head and looked at Feng Haochen. Feng Haochen did not make any extra movements. The inscriptions in his hand continued to flow. However, the spiritual energy just now was not released by Feng Haochen. Siebulo, the 9 heavens sealing formation's spirit patterns were drawn by me. I already knew that you would not be content with your lot, so I left you a way out. The formation's foundation is this empty spirit land. Do you really think that you can fight against the entire empty spirit land? Kumu coldly said. Chapter 334. Siebulo's cultivation was terrifying, but Deadwood, who was only at the Jindan period, was able to resist Siebulo with the help of the 9 heavens sealing demon array. The array was set up by the 3 of them, and it relied on the powerful array of the ethereal land. No matter how strong Siebulo was, he could not resist the power of the entire ethereal land. Just thinking about how long it took Siebulo to refine the 5 elements, one could imagine how powerful the ethereal land was. The 9 heavens sealing demon array used the 5 elements refined by Siebulo as its foundation, and these 5 elements were pulled by the ethereal land's 5 elements balance. Even Siebulo could not resist this power. Siebulo glared at Deadwood, but he did not expect Deadwood to have such a trick up his sleeve. Both of them were top-notch array masters, and Siebulo knew that if the 9 heavens sealing demon array was controlled by Deadwood, there was nothing he could do. Deadwood had already taken control of the array. Deadwood Evergreen, do you really want to go against me? Those 5 elements were refined by me. Do you believe that I won't let them return to their original positions and remove the 9 heavens sealing demon array? Let's see what you have to fight me then. Siebulo looked at Deadwood, who was in the middle of the 9 heavens sealing demon array. Since this powerful array was set up by the 3 of them, Siebulo naturally knew how to deal with Deadwood, who was controlling the array. He couldn't fight Withered Tree and Evergreen directly, but he could take out the 5 elements he had refined from the 9th heavens sealing formation. At that time, the 9th heavens sealing formation would lose its effect. Deadwood said coldly, "If you have the ability, go ahead and destroy the array. I don't need to tell you what will happen if you do that. If you forcefully disperse the 5 elements, all 3 of us will suffer from the backlash. Feng Haochen has the protection of the immortal confining prison, and I don't care if I die. If you want to die, go ahead and try." Siebulo clenched his fists so hard that they shook the sky. Deadwood's words were simply challenging his limit. The evil energy on his body became restless, and the red light of the 6 evils became faintly discernible. In 2 hours, the 9 heavens sealing devil formation will end. Wait for 2 hours. If something happens, you can deal with it. Kumu's body was covered by the runes of the 9 heavens demon sealing array. He didn't want to anger Siebulo. Siebulo was a decisive person who didn't like being threatened by others. However, both Ku Mu and Feng Haochen wanted to give Mu Yu's group of 5 a chance. They didn't want Siebulo to kill them directly. Fine. Siebulo gritted his teeth and said. His eyes flickered with an evil aura. Being threatened by the dead tree made him very angry. However, once the 9 heavens sealing demon formation was over, dead tree would be nothing in front of him. When that time came, it would be very easy for him to kill dead tree. However, Ku Mu was not afraid at all. He turned around and looked at Gomang, who was in the middle of the formation. When Gomang and the others saw Ku Mu break into the 9 heavens sealing devil array, they did not take any measures. Even Siebulo couldn't do anything to Ku Mu, who was only in the Jindan period. They couldn't do anything either. However, Gomang and the other 4 Spirit Lord Yumeng wanted to force Siebulo to attack them. Therefore, they were not afraid of Ku Mu at all. What? Do you want to be sealed after coming in? Gomang sneered. I'm here to seal you. Ku Mu didn't give him a chance to talk nonsense. He grabbed with his hand, and countless iron chains rushed out from the 9 heavens sealing devil array. In an instant, they tied Gomang up and pulled him in front of Ku Mu. You're courting death. Gomang was shocked and angry at the same time. The black and white light in his eyes was faintly discernible. The life and death aura intertwined. He wanted to activate his life and death blink ability. However, Ku Mu just waved his hand casually. 2 golden runes suddenly rushed into Gomang's eyes and dispersed Gomang's black and white eyes. Who do you think you are in my formation? Ku Mu coldly formed a seal with his hands. Countless golden runes surged on his fingertip. He stretched out 2 fingers and pointed at Mu Yu's forehead. A powerful force swept over again. An endless stream of golden runes flowed from his fingertips into Mu Yu's mind. Ku Mu's eyes also flashed with golden runes from time to time. Then, 2 rays of light shot out from his eyes and rushed into Mu Yu's consciousness. Ku Mu instantly appeared in Flowing Water Village. From afar, he saw Mu Yu being laughed at by De Zhuang and a group of children. Mu Yu's eyes were very confused. He curled up on the threshold of the thatched hut and looked at everything in confusion. Xian Ming's love-death was too powerful. Mu Yu had an irreparable regret in his heart. Therefore, he was also confused by these things. Ku Mu's body was surrounded by runes. He pushed away the group of children surrounding Mu Yu and squatted down to look directly into Mu Yu's eyes. Mu Yu, wake up. It's me. Ku Mu shook Mu Yu. The moment Mu Yu saw Ku Mu, his heart felt like it was wrapped in ice. He murmured, Old man, were you really using me? Ku Mu took a deep breath and said slowly, Mu Yu, I admit that I was using you at the beginning. But later on, even I don't know what happened. You are no longer that Mu Yu and I am no longer that Ku Mu. Your appearance changed me and made me understand many things. Whether or not Feng Haochen can recover his cultivation in the future to save Miao Yuyan is no longer important to me. Your safety is what I care about. No matter what you see now, what I said that day can't be wrong. You are indeed the pride of my life. Mu Yu's eyes twitched slightly. Ku Mu paused. He never liked to say emotional words and was not good at encouraging others. However, he knew that Mu Yu needed some words to get rid of his confusion. Why did my parents abandon me? Mu Yu was very depressed. He could not understand this. Why would there be parents who would heartlessly abandon their children? Ku Mu was silent. He did not know how to answer Mu Yu's question. Mu Yu lacked the care of his parents since he was young. Although he was always optimistic, when he saw other children acting spoiled in their parents' arms, he was also very envious. Today, he was unintentionally bewitched by Xian Ming, causing the sadness hidden in his heart to uncontrollably surge into his mind. Ku Mu had an indescribable feeling for Mu Yu. He did not have any children in his life. Because of his isolation and stuttering, no one was willing to communicate with him until Mu Yu appeared. Mu Yu was the only one who truly cared about and understood him. Although Deadwood was often annoyed by Mu Yu's words, Mu Yu would never let Deadwood suffer losses when it came to matters of principle. Even though Ku Mu had lost his cultivation and only had the strength of the Jindan period, Mu Yu, who was in the out-of-body period, still defended Ku Mu's self-esteem. When Deadwood wanted to hit him to vent his anger, Mu Yu never dodged. The tree hesitated for a moment before slowly speaking. I know I'm not qualified, but if you are willing, you can consider me your father. This was what Kumu had always wanted to say to Mu Yu. Kumu was a very stubborn person, and his stubbornness also caused him to never speak well of Mu Yu. It was already rare for him to be able to say such words at this moment. De Zhuang's figure gradually turned into Xian Ming's figure. She laughed and said, "This is so touching. Do you think you can wake that kid up like this? Don't disgust me." However, her smile suddenly froze, because a ray of light suddenly appeared on Mu Yu's body, and that ray of light made her feel fear. Mu Yu looked at Deadwood in front of him, and Deadwood's image gradually became clearer in front of him. Although Deadwood always scolded him, those words were irrelevant. Deadwood had always been worried about Mu Yu, guiding Mu Yu with a special identity and helping Mu Yu to solve all his difficulties. Mu Yu often deliberately made Deadwood angry. Their relationship was like that of a bad-tempered father and a rebellious son. If the son made the father angry, the father would scold him and even beat him up. However, they never resented each other. There was only trust. It was the trust between father and son. A trace of clarity appeared in Mu Yu's eyes. "I'll wait for you outside." Deadwood stood up and took one last look at Mu Yu. Then, countless formation patterns wrapped him up again, and he disappeared from Mu Yu's memories. Gomong, who was in the 9 heavens sealing demon formation, shouted angrily. He was shocked and angry to find that Mu Yu seemed to be gradually struggling in his body. Gomong closed his eyes and shouted, trying to suppress Mu Yu in his body. However, Deadwood's words suddenly worked. Mu Yu began to resist Gomong, wanting to take back his body. Then, Gomong's voice gradually became softer, and his whole body stopped struggling. Mu Yu slowly opened his eyes. His eyes were very clear, and they were reflected in Deadwood's eyes, making Deadwood sigh in relief. "I heard it clearly this time. I'm your pride, right?" Mu Yu opened his mouth and laughed foolishly. He was like a landlord's foolish son, who didn't know what to be happy about. Deadwood sighed in relief, and the stone in his heart finally fell to the ground. Then, he put on a stern face and scolded, "Scram! Hurry up and wake Xiao Shui up. Only by removing Xian Ming's love-death will the others have a chance to break free." Mu Yu was still that heartless Mu Yu, and Deadwood was still that grumpy old man. Mu Yu scratched his head. He knew that Deadwood was always like this, but he was already satisfied with some of the things Deadwood said. After a pause, Mu Yu said, "Then, how should I deal with Xian Ming? I already knew that girl was interested in you. Your words might be able to wake her up. If it really doesn't work, you can go against your conscience like I did just now and say something nice." Deadwood coughed twice and suggested. Of course, Deadwood didn't say those words against his conscience. However, Deadwood had always been a stubborn person. He didn't want Mu Yu to be too complacent. "Don't tell me that I also have to say sentimental words to Xiao Shui?" Mu Yu rubbed his chin. Suddenly, he thought of something and shouted, "Old man, I know what to do. Hurry up and help me. I'm going to attack." Mu Yu suddenly pounced on Xiao Shui. His movements were very fast, but Xian Ming's reaction wasn't slow either. Xian Ming looked at Mu Yu coldly and directly dodged, causing Mu Yu to pounce on empty air. "Hey, stinking brat, what are you trying to do? You still want to act like a hoodlum in broad daylight? Can't you be more serious?" Deadwood was stunned for a moment and angrily scolded. "Old man, what nonsense are you thinking? Is your life's pride that kind of person? Enough nonsense, Hurry up and help me hold Xiao Shui down. Mu Yu curled his lips. The Mu Ling sword in his hand turned into a sky full of tree branches and wrapped around Xianming. Mu Ling didn't belong to the ethereal land, so Mu Yu could completely control it here. Hold Xiao Shui down? Why does it sound like I'm going to do something shameful? Deadwood simply wanted to beat up Mu Yu again, but he still formed a chain formation in his hand and trapped Xianming. At the same time, Mu Yu's Mu Ling wrapped around the floating water spirit on Xiao Shui's waist. Mu Ling and the water spirit were like long-lost friends, fusing together all of a sudden. Chapter 335. In the summer sky, the sun was like fire, and the earth seemed to be burning. The crops in the field had already turned yellow, and the ground was cracked open. It had not rained for several months, and the drought made everyone in the village frown. There was no water in the well, and even food and clothing had become a problem. A timid little girl curled up under the eaves, and in the yard were her father and mother sighing. Their lips were cracked and blood could be seen. Yesterday they had drunk the last drop of water. Ah, how can we live without water? The girl's father shook his head, and his whole body was weak. He had considered moving, but there was no water. They would die of thirst halfway, and even moving became an extravagant hope. Cough, cough, water, water. The little girl's mother suddenly fainted on the ground. Her voice was weak, and she was severely dehydrated. Mother! Mother, are you okay? The little girl ran over in panic and threw herself into her mother's arms, sobbing softly. Her father helped the woman to a shady place and sighed heavily. Because of the drought, many people in the village had died, and the little girl's father could not do anything. But the little girl did not seem to be thirsty at all. Her lips were not cracked, and her whole body was fresh. There was no sign of dehydration, and it was a sharp contrast to the heat here. The little girl clenched her little fist. She could not bear to see her parents being tortured by the drought. She watched her mother's life gradually fade away, and her heart was very afraid. She wanted to do something. Suddenly, the little girl seemed to have made a difficult decision. She stood up, and when her parents were not paying attention, she secretly slipped out. She ran past the villagers who were sighing under the old tree at the entrance of the village, but no one was in the mood to care about her. The little girl quickly ran towards the small forest in the field. She knew that there was a dry muddy pond in the small forest. Although the bottom of the muddy pond could be seen, the soil was still wet. The villagers took out all the water that could be taken from the muddy pond, and only moist mud was left. This muddy pond was in a shady place, so the mud would not dry for the time being. The little girl carefully avoided the sallow and emaciated villagers along the way, and soon came to the edge of the muddy pond. She looked around and found that there was no one around. Squatting in the mud, she stretched out her small hands and gently shook them. Droplets of water gradually separated from the mud and floated in the air. Like the water yaman, she could control water. The little girl smiled as if relieved of a burden. She took out a small bowl from her bosom and collected the water droplets in the air into the small bowl. She held the small bowl as if she was holding a treasure and ran back quickly. No matter how fast she ran, the water in the bowl did not move at all. All the water gathered in the bowl obediently and did not spill out. Because there was no one and the crops had died, many people gathered at the entrance of the village to discuss what to do next. The little girl quietly slipped past them with a bowl of water in her hands. She wanted to take the water back to her mother, so she couldn't let anyone else see her. But at this moment, a boy suddenly rushed over and saw the water in the small bowl in her hand. He shouted, "Look, she found the water!" "What? You found water? Where did you find the water?" Everyone's eyes suddenly fell on the little girl. They stared at the water in her hand as if they had seen an incredible treasure. Many of the villagers revealed greedy expressions as they asked the little girl where the water was. Some people even wanted to snatch the water from her hand. The little girl's face was filled with panic as she stammered, "I took the water from the muddy pond in the forest." "You're lying. The muddy pond in the forest has already run out of water. Did you find some water and want to hide it? You're too selfish." "That's right. In this situation, if you find water, you should share it." The villagers began to blame the little girl, forcing her to know where the water was. The little girl was very scared. She held the bowl and wanted to squeeze through the crowd, but someone pushed her from behind. She tripped and fell to the ground. Crash! The bowl fell to the ground and broke in half. But what no one expected was that the water in the bowl floated in the air and did not spill. The little girl heaved a sigh of relief. The water in the air was like a dough as she held it in her hands. She raised her head, but soon realized that something was wrong. Everyone looked at the ball of water in the little girl's hand in horror. Some people had already screamed in horror, but many people retreated as if they had seen something terrifying. "She can control water. She's water Yaman. No wonder we don't have any water here. It must be her doing. All Yaman deserve to die." The little girl shrank into a ball in panic. She was only 4 years old, so she did not know why the villagers were berating her and cursing her. She tightly protected the water in her hand. That was the life-saving water for her mother. She could not let this ball of water fall to the ground. The irritable villagers grabbed her and violently tied her up. They shouted that they wanted to destroy Yaman. Many people spat at her, treating her as the detestable Shui Yaman. The little girl's hands and feet were tied and she was hung in the air. But the ball of water still floated in front of her. Even though the villagers tried to snatch the ball of water several times, they did not succeed. The ball of water was tightly controlled by the little girl. Soon, her father heard the commotion and rushed over. The little girl revealed a happy smile and quickly controlled the ball of water to bring it in front of her father. "Father, take the bowl. Use this water to save Mother." The little girl controlled the ball of water and said incoherently. Her father stared at the ball of water in a daze. His eyes revealed a look of horror. He took a few steps back in fear and suddenly shouted, "You evil Shui Yaman! Return my Shui to me!" The little girl's father grabbed the ball of water. What was strange was that this ball of water that no one could snatch away was wrapped in a layer of film in her father's hand. But when her father grabbed the ball of water, he ruthlessly smashed it on the little girl's body. The ball of water finally scattered and splashed on the little girl's body. The 4-year-old girl couldn't understand why her father was doing this. She stared blankly at her father. Some of the other boys also started to throw pebbles at her. She couldn't avoid them, and her whole body was covered in ghastly wounds. The scorching sun was still roasting the earth. Her hands were tied with rope, and she was hung on the grain-sunning ground. "Kill her! Yes, kill Water Yaman!" Many villagers carried dry firewood and piled it beside her. The little girl shouted in fear, begging her father to save her. But her father had already left. She was in despair. Flames instantly burned. What was strange was that the flames could not burn her body. She kept struggling. The firewood burned out, but she did not die. The villagers were even more scared. They were sure that she was from the Water Yumming Demon clan. Everyone knew that the Water Yumming Demon clan could not be burned to death, so they brought her to the mountain, dug a deep hole, and buried her alive. A 4-year-old little girl, because she revealed her ability to control water, was buried alive by the villagers as Shui Yumming. The scorching sun was still roasting the earth. She was buried in the dry soil. The little girl could no longer breathe, but she was still alive. Heaven seemed to have opened its eyes. The dark clouds quickly chased away the sun. Raindrops finally fell, soaking the soil and seeping into the ground. The water slowly wrapped around her body. As if exhausting her last bit of instinct, her body disappeared in the rain. Then, a figure appeared in the rain and fell to the ground. The little girl hugged her knees and shivered. She raised her head and saw the villagers cheering in the distance. She could faintly hear the villagers shouting, "Because we killed a human. This rain is a reward from heaven." She saw that her father was also a member of the cheering crowd. At that moment she was disheartened. She knew that she could no longer go back. She cried loudly, but her voice was drowned out by the raindrops and the rumbling thunder. No one could hear her cries. The rain mixed with her tears wrapped around her. Mu Yu looked at all of this and felt extremely melancholy. He was like a bystander, watching this scene repeat itself. The villagers in the distance were celebrating, but here was a little girl crying sadly. He squatted beside the little girl and placed his hand on the little girl's shoulder. "Xiao Shui, it's me," Mu Yu said softly. The little girl raised her head and saw Mu Yu. The little girl in Mu Yu's eyes suddenly became Xiao Shui. Xiao Shui's face was covered in tears. She hugged Mu Yu tightly. "Why? Why did they do this to me? What did I do wrong? What did I do wrong?" Xiao Shui sobbed and trembled. She didn't understand. The villagers despised her and her father didn't help her. She was like a lost child who couldn't find her way home. "You didn't do anything wrong. Everyone was too afraid of Yuman." Mu Yu patted Xiao Shui's back gently. "No, humans are all selfish. Haven't you noticed?" Xian Ming's beautiful voice resounded everywhere. The raindrops around her slowly formed a water Meng that looked like flowing water. The blue light on her body was beautiful. "Xiao Shui, don't listen to her. She's deliberately misleading you." Mu Yu glared at Xian Ming. This was Xiao Shui's memory. Neither of them could hurt the other. Mu Yu also didn't know how to expel Xian Ming from Xiao Shui's memory. "Is that so? This human in front of you is showing mercy to you. However, he's just playing a joke on you. He doesn't like you at all. You're someone who has been abandoned by the human race. No one will like you." Xian Ming's voice was charming and elegant when she said this. There was no malice in her voice. Xiao Shui let go of Mu Yu. Looking at Mu Yu's face, a trace of sadness appeared on her face. Since the day she was 4 years old, she no longer believed in humans and was taken in by the demon race. When she was in the second layer, she met Mu Yu. However, she inexplicably fell in love with a human that she didn't believe in. However, the other party was just playing a joke on her. She was very confused. She realized that Xian Ming's words were right. Humans were selfish and didn't have any feelings. "You're the same as them." Xiao Shui pushed Mu Yu away and ran behind. However, no matter where she ran, there was always a group of cheering villagers waiting for her. She realized that she had nowhere to run. She didn't want to see all of this, but she couldn't get rid of it. Her heart was tormented. Step by step, she was about to collapse. She covered her ears and screamed mournfully. However, the cheers of the villagers couldn't be erased from her ears. Mu Yu hugged Xiao Shui. He didn't know what he was doing. He just subconsciously pulled Xiao Shui into his embrace and kissed her. As if the snow had melted, the rain suddenly stopped, and all the villagers disappeared. The ground was still dry and cracked, and the sun was still roasting everything. However, all of this did not seem so important anymore. 2 young hearts were suddenly stuck together. Warm and gentle, Mu Yu and Xiao Shui hugged each other. Time seemed to have stopped. Chapter 336. Inside the 9th Heaven's Fiend Sealing Array, Xian Ming suddenly revealed an indignant expression as her face began to contort. She roared angrily. Her voice was no longer as pleasant as before. Instead, it turned bone-chilling, like the ice at the top of the North Pole. It was devoid of any emotion. "Damn it! Little bastard, I won't spare you!" Xian Ming swayed as her hands attempted to grab something in the air. Her azure blue eyes gradually dissipated before turning into pitch-black bright eyes. They were Xiao Shui's eyes. Xiao Shui panted heavily as she suppressed Xian Ming. The moment Xian Ming disappeared, The sorrowful aura that permeated the ninth heaven's fiend-sealing array slowly dissipated. Her emotions seemed to be unable to affect anyone else. The extremely powerful emotional death had been dispelled. Xian Ming, what's wrong? Oh no. Bastard, don't even think about it. Rushu roared as his body trembled. The sorrowful aura dissipated as Qing Yan relied on his powerful willpower to break free from the sorrowful memories. His eyes gradually regained clarity as he suppressed Rushu. Following that, Zhurong roared in indignation. Flames soared from his body as he attempted to take control of the body. However, the flames slowly retracted as his eyes turned cold once more. Luo Shang also woke up. Only Xiang Nan was still under Hutu's control. When Hutu saw that Xian Ming, Rushu, and Zhurong had been suppressed, he understood what had happened. He was somewhat angry, but there was nothing he could do. However, Xiang Nan was still immersed in his memories. Xiang Nan's sorrow won't disappear so easily, Hutu sneered. As long as he could last until the ninth heaven's fiend-sealing array was completed, it would no longer take effect on him. Even if he returned the body to Xiang Nan, he would still have a chance to regain control of the body in the future. Mu Yu opened his eyes and saw Qiao Shui looking at him. He blushed as he looked away and focused on Xiang Nan. Mu Yu had never asked about Xiang Nan's past, so he did not know what sorrowful memories Xiang Nan had. However, he did not have a telepathic connection with Xiang Nan like Qiao Shui, so he could not help him for the time being. The inscriptions of the ninth heaven's fiend-sealing array were gradually engraved on the 5 people. The struggling auras in their bodies gradually weakened. The ninth heaven's fiend-sealing array was nearing completion. Xiang Nan, wake up. No matter what memories you have, don't bother about them. They belong to the past. You still have us. Qing Yan kept calling out to Xiang Nan, trying to wake him up. However, Xiang Nan seemed to be too deep in his thoughts. He didn't respond at all. Only Hutu was looking at them with disdain. Boom! As the last inscription in Feng Haochen's hand fused into each of their bodies, the entire formation trembled. After that, the huge engraved lines broke into thousands of strands, turning into specks of starlight and fusing into the formation on the ground. The 5 elements that were refined by Xie Bulo finally broke free from their bindings and returned to their original positions. The dead tree had already left the 9 heavens, sealing devil formation, and Feng Haochen slowly opened his eyes. Xie Bulo stared fixedly at Xiang Nan, then he cast a sidelong glance at Feng Haochen and Dead Tree. My 2 Casanova, can I kill him now? Huda laughed, glanced at everyone and said arrogantly, the 9 heavens sealing demon formation didn't seal me, but that kid's consciousness was sealed. However, I have the ability to free him. I'd like to see how you kill him. Huda's eyes gradually dimmed. His consciousness slowly sank into Xiang Nan's body. Then, Xiang Nan's honest expression finally appeared. He looked very disappointed, and his mood sank to the bottom. No one expected Hudu to give up control of Xiang Nan's body so willingly. However, after thinking about it, they realized that Hudu had his own plans. With his current ability, if he took control of Xiang Nan's body, Xie Bulo would definitely kill Xiang Nan and send Hudu into the cycle of reincarnation. The cycle of reincarnation was never clear. To be reborn, it would take at least 81 years or even 100 years. This period of time was still too long for Spirit Lord Yumeng. Therefore, it was better to return Xiang Nan's body. If they couldn't bear to kill Xiang Nan, then Huda wouldn't have to wait so long. He believed that he would fully recover in a few years. By then, it would be easy for him to take back Xiang Nan's body. The 9 heavens demon sealing formation didn't work on him, but it did seal Xiang Nan's consciousness. However, the 9 heavens demon sealing formation wasn't used against humans. As long as Huda wanted to, he could pull Xiang Nan out of the formation. He wasn't like the other 4 spirit lords Yumeng, who were trapped in the 9 heavens demon sealing formation. It would be very difficult for him to escape. Master, I'm sorry. My mind wasn't firm enough. Please kill me. Xiang Nan knelt in front of Feng Haochen. When he raised his head again, his face was covered in tears. Everyone fell silent. No one knew what had happened to the honest and straightforward Xiang Nan. In Mu Yu's eyes, his third senior brother had always been a heartless, lazy, and hot-headed person who liked to sleep. He had a good temper and didn't have many desires. As long as he could slack off and sleep, he would be happy. Mu Yu didn't think that Xiang Nan would have a sad past. However, he didn't expect that under his honest appearance, there were some painful memories. Fine, I'll fulfill your wish. Xie snorted and slapped Xiang Nan. Stop. Xie, if you dare to kill him, you'll have to kill me first. Feng Haochen stood in front of Xiang Nan and shouted angrily. Mu Yu and the other two also stood in front of their master, protecting him and Xiang Nan behind them. Master, I've disappointed you. Xiang Nan kowtowed deeply. Feng Haochen helped him up, shook his head, and sighed. There are some things that you can't forget, but that doesn't mean that you deserve to die. When I first found you, it was to lead you onto the right path, not to kill you. Feng Haochen had always believed in his disciple. Only he knew about Xiang Nan's past. He believed that he hadn't misjudged him. Although the Nine Heavens demon sealing formation failed to seal Hoodoo, it didn't mean that Xiang Nan didn't have a chance of defeating Hoodoo. Xie glared at Feng Haochen and said, Jianing, are you challenging my bottom line like Deadwood and Evergreen? Feng Haochen shook his head. I won't allow you to kill someone I trust. Mu Yu looked at Feng Haochen and then at Deadwood. He suddenly realized that he was very lucky. He had two elders who truly cared about his disciple. Xie aura fluctuated, and evil energy rolled up and down. It was because he was angry that he was going berserk. With his character of killing whoever he wanted to kill, he would have done it long ago. However, he held back. All right, I'll give you face and not kill him, but I have one condition. He's not allowed to leave the 50-mile garden in the south. He has to be under my watch. If one day I notice Huda's aura, then there's no room for negotiation. Xie had always disapproved of Feng Haochen's way of dealing with the 5 spirit lords Yumeng. With his character, he didn't like people competing with him. He wouldn't even give face to someone from the third palace. However, Jian Ying wasn't an ordinary person. He knew what Jian Ying was doing. For thousands of years, Jian Ying had always had his own reasons for doing things. The person who understood Jian Ying the most wasn't Jian Ying's disciple, but Xie. He knew that Jian Ying wouldn't do things without reason. Everyone could accept this result. Ever since Xiang Nan and Luo Shang came to the 50-mile garden in the south, they hadn't left it much. The 50-mile garden in the south was small, but because it was prosperous, it wasn't that lonely. With Xie watching over it, it was difficult for Hutu to do anything. Everyone wanted to ask Xiang Nan about his past, but they all suppressed their curiosity. They didn't want to bring up his past. Xiang Nan looked honest and didn't have many goals. However, he had a past that he couldn't talk about. Maybe he didn't want to slack off and sleep every day. Maybe he just wanted to hide the trauma in his heart. He buried all of his pain under his heartless appearance. He had been avoiding the unpleasant past until today's events. I'm sorry. If I hadn't been the first to fall, nothing would have happened to you, Qiao Shui said, blaming herself. Xiang Nan shook his head. I should have known this would happen. It's not your fault. The empty land returned to normal. The 9 Heavens demon sealing formation had been completed. Apart from Xiang Nan, the others didn't have to worry about falling into a state of mindless killing again. However, no one was happy. Xiang Nan was their fellow disciple. They were all worried about him. Originally, everyone was worried that Qiao Shui and Mu Yu would fail. They never worried about the honest Xiang Nan. In the end, he was the one who was in trouble. 4 of the 5 spirit lords Yumeng had been sealed. This meant that when they fought against Yuman would have 4 less leaders. However, Xiongnan was still a problem. Even if only one spirit lord Yuman managed to escape, Yuman's power was still not to be underestimated. On the way back, Mu Yu constantly avoided Xiao Shue's gaze. Both of them were unable to calm down as they recalled what had happened. Mu Yu didn't know why he had done that to Xiao Shui. He only wanted to comfort Xiao Shui and let her know that not all humans had given up on her. At the time, he had kissed her in a fit of passion. Everything had happened very suddenly, but it had pulled Xiao Shui back. Mu Yu's heart was in a mess. He realized that he had developed feelings for Xiao Shui. However, he still liked Tianran. At the same time, he knew that he couldn't hurt Xiao Shui no matter what. However, he would have to make a choice between Tianran and Xiao Shui one day. What would he do then? After returning, Xiao Shui didn't leave immediately. Instead, she took the initiative to look for Mu Yu. She went to Mu Yu's room. The two of them looked at each other awkwardly. In the end, Xiao Shui broke the silence. Let's pretend that nothing happened between us. I still have to thank you for that matter. It made me feel less sad. Actually, my mother passed away a long time ago. My father thinks that I'm a jinx who caused my mother's death. You saw my stepmother. She was very good to me. I didn't want anything to happen to her. Xiao Shui said softly. Mu Yu was like a passerby who saw the secret in the depths of Xiao Shui's heart. It was also because of that inadvertent kiss that Xiao Shui woke up. He smiled embarrassedly. I won't tell anyone about those things. However, I still want to say that there are many kind people in the human race. Xiao Shui looked into Mu Yu's eyes. Both of their eyes were very clear, without any impurities. She also smiled. Her smile was as pure as a lotus flower. Yes, I know. There's one across from me. Chapter 337. After Xiong Nan came back, he returned to his lazy self. In front of Lan Ling, Qing Mei, and Enshu, he didn't show any abnormality. Everyone acted as if nothing had happened and continued to talk and laugh. However, everyone was careful not to mention the 9th heaven sealing demon formation again. They didn't want to touch Xiong Nan's scar. Xiao Shui didn't leave immediately. She chose to stay because Qingyan said that after everything was over, the 5 of them would go to Lanxi City to inquire about Yuman. Because of her relationship with Mu Yu, Xiao Shui didn't refuse. Now that the matter of the 9th heaven sealing demon formation had been resolved, the only thing left was to separate the life energy and death energy of the netherworld grass and use the netherworld grass to help Feng Haochen recover his cultivation. However, this matter was too risky. If the netherworld grass wasn't careful, it could lead to a disaster. Therefore, they still needed Xiebulo's help. Xiebulo was very active in helping Feng Haochen recover his cultivation. He didn't try to stop him. However, because the 3 of them had just finished setting up the 9th heaven sealing demon formation, they still needed to rest for a while. Mu Yu was the key person in separating the netherworld grass. He chose to cultivate seriously these days to improve himself to the best state. Life in the small courtyard on 6 Mile Street seemed to have returned to normal. However, an uninvited guest had already arrived at the 50-mile garden in the south. Tian Bue was walking on 38 Mile Street with a warm smile on his face. When he walked past the door of the execution heart shop, Xiao Hong, whose face was full of wrinkles like a chrysanthemum, was sitting on the door as usual. She shouted with a little girl's voice, "Young man, you are very handsome. Would you like to play with me?" Tian Bue turned his head and smiled at Xiao Hong. His smile was so gentle that it didn't have a trace of pretentiousness. He looked like a polite and weak scholar. However, Xiao Hong's face suddenly changed, and then she hurriedly crawled into the shop. Tian Bue didn't care. He continued to walk forward, and stopped at the door of the Shun Xian Hall. Although the Shun Xin Hall was located on 38 Mile Street, it didn't belong to an evil sect. Instead, it belonged to the Silhouette Being organization. The Silhouette Being was the strongest underground force in the cultivation world when it came to collecting information. Their members could be found in every corner of the cultivation world. Whether it was hiring cultivators to search for people or to kill people, it was never wrong to look for them. They named their sub-stronghold Shun Xin Hall because they claimed to be able to help people solve any problems. As long as the price was affordable, they even said that they could assassinate the leaders of the 8 gates. As for whether the Silhouette Being could assassinate the sect masters, no one had ever confirmed it because the status of the 8 sects was too high in the cultivation world. The strength of the 8 sect masters had already reached the level of godhood. If someone wanted to kill them, they would need to have the strength of Siebulo and the former 10 monster kings. If one wanted to kill a sovereign, the price to spend was an astronomical figure. Heaven Buwait stepped into Shun Xin Hall. The inside of Shun Xin Hall was very dark and there was a serious lack of light. It made Heaven Buwait, who was full of smiles, look very gloomy. There were 9 entrances, and each entrance was covered by a tattered black curtain. The black curtain was covered with large and small holes as if it had been gnawed by rat. However, if someone wanted to use these holes to spy on the situation inside, they would not be able to see anything. There were numbers from 1 to 9 written on the 9 curtains, and there was a wooden sign hanging on the side of each entrance. The wooden sign recorded the services of each entrance, including treasure hunting, searching for people, hunting monsters, disputes, employment, intelligence, identity, killing, and extermination. Shun Xin Hall covered the needs of any cultivator. The most common ones were treasure hunting, searching for people, and killing. As for disputes, including collecting debts or wanting to bury the hatchet with someone, Shun Xin Hall would also provide a mediator. As for identity, if a cultivator wanted to change a new identity and start a new life, or if a cultivator wanted to get a perfect identity for a certain task, Shun Xin Hall would also provide it. There was a rule in Shun Xin Hall, that was, if someone paid to kill someone, then they would not accept the target's business. This was to avoid the target hiring a member of the Silhouette Being to protect them, which would cause 2 members of the Silhouette Being to kill each other. In other words, they would not accept any business that had a conflict, and they would investigate it thoroughly before carrying out the task. At this moment, there were only 3 or 4 sneaky cultivators in Shun Xin Hall. They were asking a sloppy young counter-clerk in a low voice what kind of service they should choose. The young man, on the other hand, was explaining patiently with spittle flying everywhere. He was quite enthusiastic. Tian Buwaits directly passed through the curtain of intelligence and walked into a dark room with a green light. In front of him, there was a figure sitting on a chair. He was wearing a hood, and his whole face was hidden in the shadow, so he could not see what he looked like. Tian Buwaits was not shy and directly sat down in front of him. What kind of information do you want to collect? Information about a sect, an extreme immortal, or business? The Shadow Man asked. Looking for people, Tian Buwaits said gently. Find someone to go to the second entrance, the Shadow Man said coldly. I'm looking for detailed information about 2 people. I don't think the second entrance will provide this, right? Tian Buwaits was not angry at all. On the contrary, he showed a kind smile. Which 2 people's information? Mu Yu and Ku Mu Chongqing. The starting price for these 2 people is 5 million spirit stones, and the detailed information is 100,000 spirit stones, the Shadow Man said. Okay, Tian Buwaits said with a smile. It's 5 million per person, the Shadow Man emphasized. Okay, Tian Buwaits replied with a smile again. Ku Mu and Mu Yu walked on the street and headed towards Jili Street. They wanted to return the purple light extreme jade to Gu Xiaoman and Ji Zitong. The purple light extreme jade was a very extraordinary treasure. It contained a majestic amount of spiritual energy. Dead Tree had always used it to set up a formation to grow herbs. Later, he discovered a wooden feather, and the growth of herbs was no longer a problem. Not long after they left, Wan Wan appeared out of nowhere, swaying her slender waist like a haunting ghost. Wan Wan was determined to get Ku Mu, and would not give up until she got her hands on him. She teased and seduced him along the way, making Ku Mu very angry. Wan Wan, why are you so persistent? Also, don't tell me you've been waiting for Ku Mu at the door all day long? Mu Yu spread his hands helplessly. The uncles I've taken a fancy to have never escaped from my hands. I like those uncles who don't like me, especially a masculine man like the Poison King. Wan Wan's slender hand was like a snake that slithered across Ku Mu's arm, but it was swept away by Mu Yu. Don't use your mouth, don't use your hands. Mu Yu had a good impression of Wan Wan. Although she had a bad reputation and middle-aged men who had sex with her did not have a good ending, at least she never did anything sneaky. She liked it when men took the initiative to go with her, not when she forcibly took them away. Otherwise, Ku Mu would have been caught by Wan Wan that day. Little brother Mu Yu, it's just a touch. Why are you so sensitive? Wan Wan snorted in dissatisfaction, her voice sweet. She had changed her voice no less than 20 times along the way. If it was someone else, they would have been fascinated by Wan Wan's voice. Mu Yu tried hard to suppress the goosebumps all over his body. Wan Wan's voice was too ticklish, making him feel very uncomfortable. He asked, "Say, when will you give up? I already said that my old man is very pure. I like pure uncles, and I also like how pure uncles are to me." Wan Wan looked at Ku Mu with a smile. "I don't think you have a chance. The old man is famous for being a blockhead who doesn't understand romance," Mu Yu kindly reminded her. Ku Mu glared fiercely at Mu Yu, then strode into Qing Yu's clinic. Mu Yu snickered and followed him in. Wan Wan slowly turned around and found a place to sit down. She didn't like the smell of the clinic. Gu Xiaoman and Ji Zitong were treating a cultivator who had been bitten by a green caltrop snake. Ku Mu and Mu Yu didn't disturb them. They went straight to the backyard and went to the herb garden. This time, Ku Mu didn't let Mu Yu set up the array. Instead, he did it himself. Obviously, he reluctantly agreed with Feng Haochen's words and didn't let Mu Yu come in contact with any array knowledge. Mu Yu was also happy to be free. He was yawning and looking around. Ku Mu had already set up the array, and he had also returned the purple light extreme jade to its original position. "We'll leave through the back door so that we won't meet any annoying people again." Ku Mu passed through the small courtyard and walked toward the back door. Mu Yu stretched his body. He knew that Dead Tree didn't want to run into Wan Wan, that evil woman who wouldn't leave. However, when Ku Mu opened the back door, Wan Wan was already waiting for Ku Mu with a smile. F***CK. How did you know we were going to leave through the back door? Mu Yu was shocked. I already said that Uncle and I have the same mind. I know where Uncle goes. Don't you think so, Uncle? Wan Wan leaned toward Ku Mu again, and her hand restlessly drew a circle on Ku Mu's body. Ku Mu was annoyed. He was annoyed to death by this dog skin plaster. He turned his head and left the clinic. His footsteps were very fast. He didn't want to stay outside at all and couldn't wait to go back. Mu Yu realized that people from the evil sect really had some evil methods. Wan Wan even knew when Ku Mu was going to leave and where he was going to leave. Then, she would appear in front of Ku Mu on time. "We're going back. Are you going to send us back too?" Mu Yu asked. "I'll follow Uncle wherever he goes. Shopping with Uncle is my favorite thing," Wan Wan said without hesitation. Mu Yu shook his head helplessly. He and Ku Mu walked in front while Wan Wan swayed her slender waist and slowly followed behind. But at this moment, Wan Wan frowned as if she sensed something. She turned her head and looked back. Then, there were only a few cultivators walking slowly in the alley behind her. There was nothing strange about them. What's wrong? Muyu curiously followed Wan Wan's gaze but didn't see anything strange. Wan Wan raised her eyebrows. I feel a faint prying sensation, and it's targeted at Uncle. Someone is spying on us? But Muyu didn't notice anything strange about the cultivators behind them. They were all doing their own things and didn't see anyone suspicious. Are you sure? Muyu frowned. In his impression, only Shi Dengtian wanted to target Ku Mu. Could it be that Shi Dengtian sent someone to follow them? Wan Wan chuckled. Who cares? With me here, no one can take Uncle away from me. Uncle, don't walk so fast. Wait for me. Wan Wan swayed her slender waist and chased after Ku Mu. She even touched Ku Mu from time to time. Muyu fell into deep thought. If someone really wanted to harm Ku Mu, he must solve this problem. But he couldn't find out where that person was hiding. So how should he deal with Wan Wan's so-called spying? Muyu didn't doubt Wan Wan's words because although this woman was a bit strange and her preference for men was unacceptable to him, her strength couldn't be underestimated. Wan Wan didn't need to lie to Muyu about Ku Mu. Ku Mu and Muyu passed through the alley and walked towards Luli Street. Many streets in the southern 50-mile garden were crisscrossed and one could reach another street through the alley. Muyu and the others didn't use the teleportation array. At a tea stall on Bali Street, Tianbu Can't Wait slowly picked up a cup of tea and took a sip. He muttered to himself, Wan Wan, the golden boy and jade girl of the evil sect, really can't be underestimated. She could sense that I was spying on them from a street away. Such sharp senses are really rare in the world. But at least I found you guys. Shun Xian Hall is more efficient than $1 million trading firm. Chapter 338. For the next few days, Muyu was thinking about what Wan Wan said that day. The dead tree didn't take a single step out of the small courtyard. It was obvious that Wan Wan stuck to him like glue. After resting for a few days, the dead tree finally brought up the matter of the underworld grass. You have to be careful when separating the life energy and death energy of the underworld grass. You can't let the death energy spread out, or else there will be unimaginable consequences. Feng Haochen said seriously. Xiebulo often came over to join in the fun. He knew that Muyu wanted to use the underworld grass to treat Feng Haochen's injuries. Surprisingly, he didn't object and said, Don't worry too much. I'll cover for you if anything happens to the death energy. If it doesn't work, I'll think of a way to throw it into the first layer of heaven. Don't forget the lesson of the first layer of heaven. Feng Haochen wasn't someone who didn't consider the consequences of his actions. The first layer of heaven? What happened in the first layer of heaven? Muyu knew that the second and third layers of heaven meant that there was a first layer of heaven. There were even fourth and fifth layers of heaven. However, he had never heard of anything beyond the second and third layers of heaven. It's very simple. The first layer of heaven was destroyed by the underworld grass. Xiebulo didn't care at all. What? Muyu looked at the underworld grass in his hand and was shocked. He almost dropped it on the ground. The first layer of heaven was destroyed by this little grass? Xiebulo felt that Muyu was making a fuss over nothing and said, How can this world be as simple as you think? Since the birth of the world, everything is relative. If there is something beneficial to the development of the world, then there is something that can destroy the world. The existence of the underworld grass is a proof of this. After a pause, Xiebulo continued, No matter if it's the first layer of heaven, the second layer of heaven, or the third layer of heaven, the underworld grass exists. In the past, no one knew the serious consequences of the underworld grass producing death energy, so no one paid attention to it. Then, someone in the first layer of heaven separated the life energy and death energy of the underworld grass and sucked away the life energy. Then, the death energy started to spread and turned the first layer of heaven into a world without any living creatures. It's very likely that it was done by that stupid Yu Meng, Xie Bulo added. According to Xie Bulo, no matter if it was the first heaven, the second heaven, or the third heaven, there were humans, demons, and Yuman living there. The first heaven was mainly controlled by the Yuman. The human race and the demon race were almost extinct. 10,000 years ago, a stupid Yuman found the only underworld grass in the first heaven. He took away the life chi and threw away the death chi. At first, the amount of death aura was not large, so there would not be any serious consequences. However, the death aura's power lay in its infectiousness. It could gradually spread, turning everything it encountered into death aura, constantly expanding. By the time the Yuman in the first layer of heaven realized that something was wrong, it was too late to save them. They could only escape to the second and third layers of heaven. Those who could not escape were corroded by the death aura, and the first layer of heaven was completely covered by the death aura. Every layer of heaven had underworld grass. Deadwood said that he had been looking for underworld grass for a long time in the third layer of heaven, but he still couldn't find it. Therefore, he could only let Mu Yu go to the second layer of heaven to look for it. This was because he guessed that the underworld grass in the third layer of heaven was protected by the third layer of heaven. Mu Yu did not have the power to take the underworld grass from the third layer of heaven. Underworld grass was very scary. It was not easy to find it even in the second layer of heaven. What Mu Yu did not know was that if the mysterious Phantom Qing Yu had secretly helped him, he would not have been able to get the underworld grass. Phantom Qing Yu was like Sword Shadow Chenfeng and Xie Bulo. They were immortals with great cultivation. She helped Mu Yu because she wanted to help Sword Shadow Chenfeng as well. Actually, I suspect that the Spirit Lord Mu Yuman in the first heaven was the one who sucked away the life chi of the underworld grass in the first heaven. Mu Yuman loved exuberant life chi. The life chi of the underworld grass was a huge treasure to him. Think about his ability to kill in the blink of an eye. Unfortunately, he was an idiot. He did not handle the death aura well and destroyed the entire world. Xie Bulo's face was filled with schadenfreude. In the first heaven, Yuman had the advantage. Their destruction did not arouse Xie Bulo's sympathy. Mu Yu had once used the blink of an eye ability. His eyes represented life and death. Tian Ran and Feng Haochen's fatal injuries were healed by his blink of an eye ability. Unfortunately, this ability was too heaven-defying. It was not something he could control. Now that Spirit Lord Mu Yuman in his body was sealed by the 9 heavens sealing array, Mu Yu could no longer use this ability. This heaven-defying ability had even more restrictions. He could not use his left eye to revive Yuman infinitely, nor could he use his right eye to kill a large number of humans. This ability was extremely taxing on his body. Most importantly, once a human's cultivation reached a certain level, they would be able to resist the death aura. When Mu Yu used the blink of an eye ability in the Moyen Mountains, it seemed unstoppable. In fact, with his cultivation during the Jindan period, if he used it on an out-of-body stage cultivator, it would at most cause a nosebleed. It would not cause any substantial damage. Even Mu Yu himself would suffer from the backlash. You don't have to worry about the excess life chi of the underworld grass. The heaven and earth array will absorb it. Dealing with the death aura is a big problem. The passageway to the first layer of heaven has been sealed. It is unrealistic to throw it to the first layer of heaven. We have to rely on the Mu Ling that you obtained from Yuman Mu Yu. However, I can't guarantee what will happen to Mu Ling after it absorbs the death aura, Feng Haochen said slowly. Don't worry about those useless things. Our great love saint should hurry up and recover his cultivation. I can't wait to beat up the guardian of the third palace. That guy is so annoying from head to toe. There's not a single good person in the third palace. Siebulo rubbed his fists and said, Can't you cover up your words a little when you speak? Feng Haochen said helplessly. Siebulo snorted disdainfully. What are you afraid of? Are you worried that the guardian will eavesdrop? Didn't you set up so many arrays in this small courtyard? He has extraordinary attainments in array Dao. Do you think the three of us will lose to him? Although Siebulo said that he wanted to kill Jian Ying and Chun Feng every day, Jian Ying and Chun Feng were old friends of his for thousands of years. He would not really kill them. Most importantly, some of the methods of the third-layer palace were too overboard. Even he could not stand it. That's enough. Stop talking nonsense. Let's start dealing with the netherworld grass. Kumu said. Everyone's attention was on the netherworld grass in Mu Yu's hands. Normally, only an alchemist could accurately separate the netherworld grass. However, with Mu Yu here, there was no need to worry. Although his alchemy skills were at the level of an average alchemist, his control over plants was incomparable to others. Moreover, he had Kumu to guide him. No matter how heaven-defying the effects of the netherworld grass were, it still existed in the form of a plant. It had black and white leaves intertwining with each other. The life energy and death energy were in a miraculous state. This state of balance was very difficult to break. Just like the balance of the 5 elements in the ethereal land, the balance of life and death in the netherworld grass was even better. Follow my instructions and separate the 9 Qi soul cleansing flower. Under Kumu's guidance, he first separated the 9 Qi soul cleansing flower's death energy. The process of separating the 9 Qi soul cleansing flower was not that complicated. This was because it was different from the netherworld grass. It did not have many restrictions and did not have any internal balance issues. This process was very easy for Mu Yu. Separating the life energy and death energy of the netherworld grass was not an easy task. If the balance it maintained could be broken so easily, then this world would have been destroyed long ago. The life energy and death energy of the netherworld grass were intertwined. This kind of restrictive power was very difficult to separate. Even with Mu Yu's ability to control wood, it was still very difficult. Be careful. Try your best to find that point in the balance of the netherworld grass. As long as you destroy that point, you will be able to separate the 2 leaves. Kumu said. Mu Yu touched the netherworld grass. His entire consciousness had already merged with the netherworld grass. There were 2 leaves of the netherworld grass. The white one contained boundless vitality, while the black one was cold and domineering. The moment Mu Yu's consciousness entered the netherworld grass, he felt as if he was struggling on the edge of life and death. Suddenly, he felt an unwarranted tremble in the depths of his heart. Mu Yu was shocked to find that there was another world within the netherworld grass. The 2 leaves of the netherworld grass formed a world of their own. He had entered from the intersection of the 2 leaves, but he did not control his speed well and still entered the death energy of the netherworld grass. The surroundings were a desolate black fog. Whether it was under his feet, above his head, or around him, the endless black fog stretched as far as the eye could see. The black fog was restless and restless. From time to time, it would condense into all kinds of strange shape. It swayed faintly, drifted apart, and then condensed together again. The pure black fog gave people the impulse to despair. Killing, madness, restlessness, sadness, and all kinds of emotions swarmed together. It made Mu Yu think of death in an instant. This was a primitive power that was deducing all kinds of possibilities that could lead to death. This black fog was the so-called death energy. It was luring Mu Yu back to the embrace of death. The black fog transformed and suddenly, the sky was filled with the smell of blood. All the black fog became incomparably scarlet red. Endless slaughter flashed past Mu Yu's eyes. Then, Mu Yu saw a bloody scene. The setting sun dyed half the sky red. The blood-red light poured down on the earth, illuminating the mess. The ground was no longer flat. Sharp earth spikes rose up from the ground and pierced through the corpses. The blood had not dried up. The swords were still in the hands, but the lives had already passed away. The trees were scattered everywhere. The hard branches had human figures hanging on them. The leaves were blood-red and glistening. It was extremely strange. The river had been frozen. Icicles rose from the water surface and pierced through countless self-cultivators. Warm blood flowed down the icicles, but it was unable to melt the bone-chilling cold. The flames burned vigorously on the ground. With the bodies of the self-cultivators as the source of fire, they burned and burned, reflecting the light of the setting sun. The cruel flying sword betrayed its master. The tip of the sword pierced through the heart. It flashed with a cold light and came out of the body. The eyes of the person holding the sword were still filled with fear. He did not understand why the sword in his hand had turned towards him. The bitter war between the human race and Yuman actually entered Mu Yu's mind. He saw all kinds of shocking deaths of the human race's self-cultivators. Their heads flew, their bodies were severed, their limbs were broken, their bones were shattered, and their blood flowed like a river. He saw Yuman turn into steam, coke, dust, wood shavings, and molten iron. There was no chance of survival. There was no fluctuation of life. Everything was death. All living things were dying. Death was the final destination of all living things. In this place there was no hope. There was no life. In this place, everything was displaying the state of death. Mu Yu hated this feeling. Within the black leaves of the underworld grass was a world of death. If one stayed there for too long, they would feel despair. It would also cause Mu Yu's consciousness to dissipate and turn into death. He ran back. He knew where the breath of life was. That direction was like a bright lamp in the deathly stillness, guiding him. However, he suddenly realized that the bright lamp was very close, but he could not touch it. He ran towards the direction of life. He wanted to leave this place, but he could not find the exit. Time slowly passed. He felt that thousands of years had passed, but he still could not walk to the intersection of life. A soul-stirring despair shrouded the bottom of his heart, Hua. As if he was fished out of the water, Mu Yu's entire body was soaked in cold sweat. Ku Mu's hand touched Mu Yu's life point and pulled his consciousness out of the death aura of the underworld grass. My consciousness fell into the world of death of the underworld grass. That place is too scary. After a long time, Mu Yu spat out these few words in shock. Chapter 339. Mu Yu opened his eyes wide. When his consciousness entered the underworld grass, it felt like thousands of years had passed, but in reality, it had only been less than 10 breaths. When you entered, your whole body was covered in cold sweat. I was worried about you, so I had to pull you back, Ku Mu said again. Siebulo mocked with disdain. Ku Mu, you're making a fuss. I couldn't even stop you. Don't try anymore. It's too dangerous for your consciousness to enter the underworld grass in your current state. Feng Haochen shook his head. But if he didn't try, the underworld grass wouldn't be able to help Feng Haochen recover his cultivation. Everything Mu Yu had done would be for naught, and Feng Haochen would die in the end. His body would be taken away by the guardian of the three-layered palace. This was something that Mu Yu didn't want to see. I'll enter through the white leaves of the underworld grass. There shouldn't be any problems. The death aura of the underworld grass makes me feel despair. That kind of despair can't be stopped. Mu Yu didn't want to give up. He reached out his hand towards the white leaves of the underworld grass. But Ku Mu blocked Mu Yu's hand and said seriously, "No. Death and life are different. If your life is too strong, your energy will fall into endless excitement. It will be hard to get rid of it. If I want to wake you up, I'll have to hit your Achilles heel. Do you want to become a cripple?" The Achilles heel of a cultivator was the dantian. If the Achilles heel was hit lightly, it might not be able to wake Mu Yu up. But if the Achilles heel was hit too hard, it could easily damage the foundation and even destroy Mu Yu's cultivation. Then what should I do? I can't give up like this, right? Mu Yu still wanted to try. Kumu pondered for a long time. As if he had made up his mind, he said, I'll follow your consciousness in. If there's any problem, just let one of them hit my Achilles heel and pull me out. They can also pull you out. No. Feng Haochen and Mu Yu said in unison. Kumu snorted and coldly glanced at the two. Is there a better way? Feng Haochen, your dantian is protected by the heaven and earth array. No one can touch it except yourself. You can't touch your dantian. You can't count on someone like Siebulo. Can you find a better candidate? Feng Haochen shook his head and said, I can't let you take the risk for me. Replace you? Don't flatter yourself. I did it for her. I don't want her to suffer any more. Kumu clenched his fist. Feng Haochen wanted to say something but hesitated. In the end, he sighed. Mu Yu was startled. He knew that Kumu was referring to Miao Yuan. Kumu was willing to sacrifice anything for Miao Yuan, but Mu Yu still objected. What if there's a problem with your cultivation? The dead tree said lightly, My cultivation has already been crippled once, so it doesn't make a difference this time. I've already decided to return to the Pill Cauldron sect after this matter is resolved. There will be people there who will take care of me. It doesn't matter whether I have a cultivation base or not. The Pill Cauldron sect's Lingbingxue would protect Dead Tree, but Mu Yu didn't want Dead Tree to return to the Pill Cauldron sect without any ability to protect himself. Lingbingxue couldn't protect Dead Tree all the time. Just like last time, Shi Dengtian would definitely kill Dead Tree if he seized the opportunity. No, I don't want anything to happen to you. Mu Yu refused. Don't dawdle. You want to save your master, and I want Miao Yuan to be free from the Red Dust sect. This is the only way. Also, I won't necessarily be in trouble. If you succeed, you won't have to sacrifice my cultivation base. Kumu put his hand on Mu Yu's shoulder. Mu Yu didn't dare to bet on Kumu's cultivation base, but when he saw Kumu's resolute gaze, he knew that Kumu had already disregarded life and death for the person he loved. He couldn't refuse Kumu's request. I will definitely succeed, Mu Yu said firmly. When it came to Kumu's safety, he didn't dare to be careless. Stop talking nonsense, hurry up. Kumu's consciousness sank into Mu Yu's body. Mu Yu brought Kumu's consciousness with him. In order to prevent himself from falling into the death chi again, he chose the white leaf of the underworld grass to enter. The white fog covered Mu Yu and Kumu. A harmonious and cheerful feeling arose spontaneously. Suddenly, the grass around them grew and the orioles flew. Bees and butterflies danced in the air. It was a scene full of vitality. Mu Yu was surprised to find that the person beside him was no longer Kumu. Instead, it was Tianran. Tianran smiled happily. She nestled in Mu Yu's arms. A faint fragrance wafted over, and Mu Yu couldn't help but hug Tianran tightly. The temperature of the wonderful person in his arms was so real that Mu Yu almost forgot that this was just a figment of his imagination. We will never be separated, right? Tianran asked softly. Mu Yu really wanted to hug Tianran like this and never let go. He had an endless desire to be with Tianran forever, but he tried hard to restrain himself. At this moment, Kumu's figure was still in his mind. He knew that Kumu had also fallen into some kind of illusion. He couldn't sink into this kind of empty hope. We definitely will. Mu Yu gently kissed Tianran's forehead. Then, he closed his eyes and cruelly pushed Tianran away. When he opened his eyes again, he saw Grandpa Village Chief telling stories not far away. Then, he saw Mu Yu returning to Luochen Mountain and living a carefree life. He saw Master recovering his cultivation and imprisoning the guardian of the three-layered palace. He saw Yaman bowing his head to the human race. he saw that there were no more selfish self-cultivators among the human race. All the self-cultivators treated each other with respect. There was no more killing in the world of self-cultivators. Everything was developing in a beautiful direction. Everywhere was filled with hope and laughter, making people reluctant to leave. All of this made him very excited. The life he wanted was here. If all of this could come true, he was willing to exchange everything for it. However, with the lesson of the past, he tried hard to suppress these hopes. He had to find a balance between life and death. He ran with all his might, looking for Kumu's figure. Finally, he saw Kumu on a grassland. Kumu and a beautiful woman were hugging each other as they sat quietly on the grassland. This woman looked 70% similar to Tianran. If Muyu didn't guess wrong, she was Miaoyuyan. Her face didn't show any signs of erosion. She was still so elegant and mature. Kumu looked at Miaoyuyan, his eyes full of tenderness and love. It was as if Miaoyuyan was the only one left in his world. There was no room for anyone else. Muyu had never seen Kumu have such a tender side. In the past, Kumu had always scolded him and didn't give Muyu any face. Only here could he see a side of Kumu that others didn't know about. Muyu even saw himself. He and Tianran were sitting next to Kumu. They looked at Kumu smiling so happily. That kind of sincere laughter was so carefree, without any impurities or worries. It was a very warm scene. Muyu didn't even have the heart to destroy it. It's been a long time in here, but it's very slow outside. Let Kumu enjoy this happy time more. Muyu sat down not far from Kumu. Looking at the two couples in front of him, he thought that it would be great if they could stay like this for a few hundred years. However, he was suddenly slapped hard on the back of his head, causing him to raise his head in pain. He found that Deadwood was standing behind him with an angry look on his face. Muyu blinked. He looked at Kumu, who was hugging Miaoyuyan, and then looked at Kumu behind him. Why was Kumu split into two? Which one was he imagining? Bastard, why don't you wake up? Kumu sneered as he glanced at the scene in the distance. I just want you to hug me a little longer. Really, you don't know how to appreciate my kindness. Muyu touched the back of his head and muttered. Kumu scolded, Are you stupid? That's your imagination. I'm not there at all. What do you mean? Muyu looked at Kumu behind him, and then at Kumu in the distance. He was a little confused. Everything that happened here is just your imagination. You thought that the best thing that ever happened to me was being together with you, Yen. That's why you saw me being together with her. However, all of this is just an illusion. Because you saw what you wanted to see, you're still foolishly waiting for me. You want to wake me up after a while, right? Kumu scolded him without holding back. Why am I a little confused? Muyu looked at Kumu behind him. Then how can I be sure that you're not an illusion? Kumu slapped Muyu on the back of his head again without holding back. Do you feel happy when I hit you? Muyu obviously didn't like being hit by Kumu every time. Every time Kumu taught him a lesson, he was just too lazy to dodge because he wanted to protect Kumu's pride. He touched the back of his head and hurriedly said, Okay. Stop hitting me. I know you're real. Muyu rolled his eyes. It turned out that he was thinking too much. However, when he thought about it, it seemed to make sense. He wanted to see Kumu happy, and the only thing that could make Kumu happy was Miaoyuyan and Kumu together. Therefore, that kind of scene appeared. Unfortunately, he thought that the Kumu he imagined was the real Kumu. The hope that the netherworld grass gave people was really scary. It was willing to let people see anything they wanted to see. However, he suddenly thought about it. He also hoped that Tianran and Master would recognize each other as father and daughter, and then live together as a family. Just as this thought formed, Kumu in the distance suddenly turned into Feng Haochen. Feng Haochen and Miaoyuyan were smiling happily with Tianran. A fake Muyu was also smiling foolishly at the side. Then, Kumu slapped Muyu on the back of his head again. Muyu turned around and saw that Kumu's face was dark. Obviously, he didn't like seeing Feng Haochen and Miao Yuyan together. Who told you to let your imagination run wild? Kumu was annoyed. Muyu felt sullen. He was being scolded by Kumu for thinking about happy scenes. Now, he was being scolded by Kumu for thinking about happy things for Feng Haochen. Why was he so unlucky? Forget it, he should think about the things that he liked. Muyu appeared in the distance. His left hand was holding Tianran, and his right hand was holding Qiao Shui. The three of them looked at the rising sun in the east. Kumu kicked him and scolded, "You little brat, are you trying to have a foot in two boats? It's all fake anyway. Can't I just think about it?" Muyu muttered, "You're always hitting me. My cultivation is higher than yours, and I'm also the branch master of the Pill Cauldron sect. You should respect experts." "Respect who? Do you dare to rebel?" Kumu slapped him again without holding back. Then, he said seriously, "I'm hitting you to make you have unpleasant memories, to make you remember that this is the real me." Chapter 340. Muyu had always been curious about what the dead tree had seen in the illusion. Unfortunately, the dead tree always had an impatient look on his face, and refused to say anything even if he was beaten to death. From time to time, he would even kick Muyu. "Did you see yourself doing shameful things with Miao Yuyan's wife?" The dead tree kicked Muyu. "If it's not Master's wife, then it must be with Elder Ling Han." Muyu snickered. The dead tree kicked Muyu. "Heavens! Could it be that, other than the two of them, you like a third person? Wait. Is it that Wan who is obsessed with uncles? Wow. Old cow eating young grass?" Muyu made a fuss about nothing. This time, the dead tree kicked Muyu twice. "This kind of thing can't affect me." The dead tree looked around and saw that Muyu was filled with messy hopes. He said impatiently, "Think of something sad and you can get rid of these illusions. Sad things will shatter your hopes and the direction of the death aura will be determined." Muyu shrugged. It was really difficult for him to imagine sad things in such a beautiful moment. He asked puzzledly, "Old man, what sad things are you thinking about? You can tell me and let me use it as a reference." The dead tree glanced at him and shook his head. "You don't want to know." The two of them continued to walk forward, passing through all kinds of illusions filled with hope. Those scenes were so real that Muyu couldn't help but linger. He liked this kind of thriving scene. If it wasn't for the dead tree splashing cold water on Muyu from time to time, he wouldn't want to leave this place at all. Gradually, the aura of hope weakened. A strange gully appeared on the ground in front of them. It was so abrupt in this world of vitality. This gully was located under the ground. It was so deep that the bottom couldn't be seen. It was as if someone had forcibly torn the ground apart. The gully was filled with an aura of despair. The gray airflow kept surging, wanting to invade this world of hope. However, whenever the gray airflow was about to drift out of the gully, there would always be a faint white light separating it, not allowing the gray airflow of the gully to enter this world. Muyu was overjoyed. After passing through this deep trench, we should reach the world of death energy, right? Kumu looked at the ravine thoughtfully, then nodded and said, "It should be." "Then what should I do? Where is the balance between life and death?" Muyu walked to the edge of the gully and looked down. The gray air current was endless, and the aura of despair was rising from the gully. It was completely different from the outside world that was filled with hope. Deadwood walked along the edge of the gully, stopping from time to time to look for any abnormalities. This gully was about 30 meters long and 20 meters wide. It wasn't very wide, but he didn't know how deep it was. The underworld grass itself is a plant. Your consciousness is in the underworld grass, so you should know where this point is. The dead tree raised its head and said to Muyu. Muyu used his hand to gently touch the edge of the gully. Suddenly, an excited thought flashed through his mind. This thought seemed to have existed for a long time. To him, everything here was natural. The structure of the underworld grass was also under his control. He suddenly felt an indescribable joy and said, "I know what to do now." Mu Yu lay on the edge of the gully and stared at the gloomy gray air current below. He gently stretched his hand forward. The moment the gray air current rushed out, there would always be a white light intercepting it. Then, the white light and the gray air would collide and disappear. What he wanted to grasp was this point. The white light, black air, and gray air collided in an instant. Even with Mu Yu's speed, he couldn't easily grasp that point. He kept trying, and a strong desire welled up in his heart. At this moment, his hand suddenly stretched forward. He sensed something, and the entire world that was full of vitality suddenly trembled, as if someone was deliberately stirring something. The gray color of the gully rapidly flowed and surged, gradually turning into a pitch-black darkness. The surrounding scenes that were full of hope, including Tian Ran, Qiao Shui, Feng Haochen, Ku Mu, and the others who appeared in Mu Yu's imagination, slowly changed shape, twisted, and turned into a white light that flowed endlessly into the pitch-black gully. White and black began to entangle and fight. They seemed to want to devour each other, but they were always evenly matched. The two chased and attacked each other, but they still couldn't corrode each other. The whole world was only left with pure black and white. Black and white intertwined, becoming the most primitive power entangled together. Mu Yu looked at the black and white in front of him in surprise. The thriving vitality and the broken despair of death occasionally jumped around him. He reached out and grabbed the white airflow with his left hand and the black airflow with his right hand. Then, he suddenly pulled, and the black and white were suddenly pulled apart. His consciousness began to roll, and he suddenly returned to reality. The black and white netherworld grass in front of him had been completely separated. The vitality and death qi swept out, instantly enveloping the four people in the room. Mu Yu inserted the white leaves of the netherworld grass into Feng Haochen's body. A huge wave of energy came, and Feng Haochen suddenly looked up to the sky and roared. Then, he instantly recovered his cultivation. Mu Yu's heart was thumping, and he was very excited. Master recovered his cultivation, which meant that the guardian of the Sanchong Palace also had to pay a huge price. Let's go. Let's go destroy the Sanchong Palace. Feng Haochen waved his hand heroically, and the restriction of the immortal confinement prison was instantly reduced to ashes. The millions of people in the Moyun mountain range didn't have to wait for death anymore. Mu Yu's heart was surging. He and Qingyan followed Master's footsteps and started to declare war on the Sanchong Palace. Mu Yu. Ku Mu kicked Mu Yu's butt. Mu Yu staggered and fell to the ground. All the beautiful scenery around him suddenly disappeared, and he returned to the world of the netherworld grass. The death qi on the ground was still flowing, and it disappeared after colliding with the white light. I've entered into an illusion again. Mu Yu gasped for breath. That heroic spirit of a moment ago, when he wanted to fight Threefold Palace to the death, still lingered in his mind. He climbed up and looked at the ravine on the ground with uncertainty. Then, he looked at Ku Mu next to him. I told you to be careful. It's very easy to fall into the world you desire here. Ku Mu still stood in the same place, and there was a distance between him and the ravine. It was as if he had never been there. That ravine it's fake. It's a ravine that leads to death that you imagined. You must have seen this kind of gloomy ravine somewhere before. You thought that there must be a dividing line between life qi and death qi, so as long as you crossed the dividing line, you would be able to reach a balance point. Therefore, this gully appeared in front of you. The dead tree didn't walk over just now. Everything was just Mu Yu's imagination. Gloomy ravine? Now that you mention it, I do have some impression of it. Mu Yu suddenly remembered that there was a disorderly burial valley in the Moyun mountain range. There were many abandoned and unclaimed corpses there, and it was also the best place to silence people. In the past, in order to find Mu Yu's master, Feng Haochen, Gui Xianyue killed 49 Jindan period cultivators in the disorderly burial valley. He used the souls of the Jindan period to perform the soul-searching technique. At that time, the disorderly burial valley was no different from the ravine in front of him. Looking at it this way, this ravine was not the so-called equilibrium point at all. That's troublesome. Just now I inexplicably entered an illusion. It's impossible to guard against it, Mu Yu said helplessly. Some of Mu Yu's fantasies appeared around him again. These fantasies were so real that Mu Yu almost confused reality with illusion again. He had encountered this kind of situation where he couldn't distinguish between reality and dream. When he was in the second layer of heaven, it was the phantom who implanted false memories in him, which almost made him collapse. The netherworld grass was given to him by the phantom, so there must be some relationship between the phantom and the netherworld grass. If only little Marshall was here. At that time, Mu Yu relied on little Marshall to get out of the phantom's dream. The phantom once said that little Marshall was like it, bound by various laws between heaven and earth, beyond the 5 elements. Therefore, there was no figure of little Marshall in Mu Yu's dream. Mu Yu still couldn't understand what the phantom said. Existences like us have an inexplicable force that restricts each other. Mu Yu couldn't figure out what this sentence meant, but Mu Yu was sure that little Marshall was not a simple guy. In the scene around Mu Yu's netherworld grass, there was indeed no figure of little Marshall. Mu Yu tried to imagine little Marshall, but found that it was impossible at all. The scene here seemed to deliberately avoid little Marshall. What can little Marshall do to help? The dead tree asked puzzledly. Mu Yu didn't tell the dead tree in detail about this matter. At that time, because it involved some unpleasant memories in the dream, he deliberately hid this dream. But now, he couldn't care so much. He told the dead tree about his illusion in the second layer of heaven and specifically talked about little Marshall's situation. After listening, the dead tree frowned and nodded repeatedly, falling into contemplation. Describe the dream again in detail, the dead tree said. Mu Yu had no choice but to tell it from the beginning. This time, he was extremely detailed, even describing his thoughts and emotions at that time. At this time, the dead tree seemed to have noticed something and whispered, "I know how to find the death aura." He walked back and stopped next to the fake Tianran. He watched the fake Tianran and the fake Mu Yu snuggling there without making a sound. They just kept staring at the grass in front of them, not knowing what they were doing. Then, a trace of black gas suddenly appeared on the grass in front of them. The black gas spiraled and gradually formed 2 daggers. The dead tree picked up the daggers and threw one to Mu Yu. He pointed at Tianran and said, "Kill her." Mu Yu held the daggers and asked puzzledly, "Why? Her death means despair to you, doesn't it?" The dead tree looked around and continued, "When you described the dream to me in detail just now, I thought of one thing. I know that little Marshall is not a simple existence. And the phantom and little Marshall you mentioned seem to have the ability to restrain each other, and the so-called life and death are also relative existences that restrain each other. Where there is life, there is death. So, the hope you see in front of you actually contains despair. You mean, we don't have to look for the edge of the death aura at all, and the death aura is integrated in this world full of hope?" Mu Yu was suddenly enlightened. He looked around at the vibrant vitality that was filled with infinite hope. He could never have imagined that such a scene would be filled with despair. Yes. The dead tree looked at the dagger in his hand and said, "In a world full of hope, there is nothing that can hurt people. This dagger comes from the despair in my heart. You can't do it, so I made one for you. If you want to break out of your dream, you have to kill Tranquil." Chapter 341. Tianran was his everything. He only wanted to try his best to protect her. He never thought that he would hurt Tianran. Even if it was Tianran in his dream, he couldn't bear to kill her. Mu Yu shook his head. No, I can't do it. I don't want to see Tianran lying in front of me, covered in blood. That's fake, Dead Tree said sternly. Even though he knew that Tianran's death wasn't real, he knew that this illusion felt so real that he couldn't find a single flaw in it. In this real and fake world, Tianran's death was also real for him. It meant real death for him. This world full of hope was like the false but incomparably real memory that Phantom had implanted in him. Mu Yu put down the dagger and asked, "Old man, how are you going to get out of the illusion?" Dead Tree didn't say a word. He turned his head to look at the fake Mu Yu next to him. He took a deep breath, closed his eyes and stabbed the fake Mu Yu in the chest. There was a slight change on his face, which made his body tremble uncontrollably, but he steadied himself and said, "Do you understand now?" Dead Tree's voice was a little strange, which made Mu Yu startled. The fake Mu Yu's eyes became dull. He looked at Dead Tree in disbelief, and then a gray air of despair appeared in his chest, which began to spread and rotate. The hope in the fake Mu Yu turned into despair. His vitality was rapidly fading away and was slowly replaced by the death chi. The death chi of despair slowly sucked Dead Tree in. Mu Yu wanted to say something but stopped. He pursed his lips. The moment he saw Dead Tree kill him, his expression was the same as the fake Mu Yu's. It felt like Dead Tree had really stabbed him, which made his heart sink. The feeling of Dead Tree killing him was so real that Mu Yu almost wanted to ask why Dead Tree killed him. He knew that it was all false, but his physical senses kept telling him that it was real. "Mu Yu Gij, are you really going to kill me?" Tianran looked at Mu Yu with a pitiful look, making it impossible for Mu Yu to kill her. Mu Yu held Tianran in his arms. He gently felt Tianran's heartbeat, it was so real and vigorous. The dagger in his hand flashed, and a cold light like a poisonous snake invaded the beating heart. That saber seemed to have pierced through Mu Yu's chest, causing him to feel extreme pain in his heart. Boundless grief assaulted him, and the illusionary world around him shattered like a mirror. The shattered fragments scattered about, transforming into specks of light that vanished completely. The mirror shattered, and the beautiful dream dissipated. He arrived at a mystical world. This world was almost the same as the illusion just now. It was the purest black and white, but the black and white were clearly separated. They did not invade each other and maintained a stable state. At this moment, Dead Tree was standing at the edge of the white world. Mu Yu calmed his fluctuating emotions. He was also at the edge of the white world, but at this moment, his heart did not have that kind of hope and joy. Only sadness was left. The moment Dead Tree attacked him made him sad, and the moment he attacked Tianran also made him sad. "Are you wondering why I killed you, and not Yu Yen or Bingxue?" Dead Tree said slowly. Mu Yu was silent. He did not know what to say. When Dead Tree attacked the fake Mu Yu, he did have the impulse to ask this question. "Because the two of them are more important to you than me." "I know, and I don't mind," Mu Yu said. This feeling was still very strange. Mu Yu did not speak the truth. He treated Dead Tree as someone close to him. When Dead Tree chose to attack him instead of Miao Yuyan and Ling Bingxue, he was still a little unhappy. Dead Tree looked at Mu Yu seriously and said, "No matter which one of you three is, I don't want to see anything happen to any of you. I chose you because I am worried about you the most. Although Yu Yen is imprisoned, her life is not in danger. Shuer will also be fine. Only you are the most reckless, and now you have entered the supreme immortal ranking. That ranking is too dangerous. Even if you have Gomang in your body, you will still die. The three palaces will not watch you grow. Because you are Jian Ying's disciple, he will think of a way to stop you from becoming the last 9 supreme immortals. I know that the possibility of something happening to the two of them is very small, and the possibility of something happening to you is the highest. To break the illusion, you have to face the thing you are most afraid of. I am most afraid that you will lose your life, and you are most afraid that something will happen to Tianran. So, this is the only way. Dead Tree pursed his lips. Dead Tree thought of his own illusion, and his heart wavered. He was not immune to the illusions here. In the beginning, he had also fallen into his own illusion. However, he quickly broke free from it. He had seen more storms than Muyu, so he knew how to deal with this kind of situation. So, he easily broke free from his own illusion. He had already seen this black and white world. However, Muyu was not able to break free from his own illusion. So, he entered Muyu's illusion to help Muyu break free from those illusions that were filled with hope. Everyone had different ways of breaking free from illusions. He could think of some sad things to break free. However, Muyu's life experience was still shallow. He was still young, and he had not experienced the true separation of life and death. So, he was unable to imagine those sad scenes. So, he could only truly experience it by killing people. Muyu looked at Dead Tree for a long time. Then, he laughed. "Old man, you are making me cry." "Scram! A bastard like you will cry for me? Then the sun will rise from the west." Dead Tree angrily scolded. Okay. In the future, even if you die, I will not cry." Muyu made a face and then asked in puzzlement, "Old man, I am very curious about what the illusion you saw was." "You want to know?" "Yes. Was I in your illusion?" "Yes, and there were many scenes," Dead Tree said simply. "Really? Am I a peerless hero in your fantasy world?" "No, you were just a bear." Dead Tree thought of his own illusion, and the corner of his mouth revealed a smile. Muyu rolled his eyes. "You have no conscience." The two of them once again focused their eyes on this black and white world. There seemed to be a wall in the middle of this black and white world. The white and black air currents were surging in their respective domains. However, when they reached the boundary, everyone tacitly turned back. There was no conflict. Everything seemed so orderly. This black and white world was endless and daunting. "We have found the point of balance between the aura of death and the aura of life. Now, how do we divide them?" Muyu took a step forward and walked into the aura of death. Suddenly, a cold aura filled the air. He quickly pulled his foot back, thinking that it was more comfortable to stay with by say. Dead Tree scolded again, "You little bastard! If you don't step into the aura of death, how do you know where the point of balance is?" Muyu mumbled, "When I step into the aura of death, I will think of all kinds of feelings of despair. It is as if my life has fallen into a valley. I was already scared out of my wits just now." You need half of your body to be in the aura of life, and half of your body to be in the aura of death. This way, your heart will be filled with two completely opposite emotions. You have to learn to control these emotions. When you are able to achieve a state where there is neither sadness nor joy, you should know how to separate the aura of life and death, Dead Tree said. Wasn't it only possible for monks to achieve a state where there was neither sadness nor joy? Although that was what Muyu said, he still stepped into the aura of death helplessly. The right half of his body felt as if it had fallen into an ice cellar. The chilling aura of despair crawled all over his right half. He saw the bloody scene again, and fear spread as if it was going to devour him. However, the other half of his heart was filled with joy and vitality. Hope occupied the left half of his body, allowing him to see the positive side of things. Muyu tried his best to adjust his body. He was in a terrible state. One moment, he was filled with hope, and the next moment, he was filled with despair. One moment, he was so happy that he was about to ascend to heaven, and the next moment, he was so sad that he wanted to commit suicide. Calm your heart. Didn't your bastard master teach you something called the dust fall technique? Isn't that thing used to calm your heart? Dead Tree shouted. Mu Yu was suddenly enlightened by Dead Tree's reminder. He quickly activated the dustfall technique and gradually calmed his heart down. The dustfall technique required one to have no distractions and not be disturbed by the outside world. Everything depended on one's own will to control one's heart. Spiritual power slowly circulated throughout his body, flowing through every meridian in his body, gradually calming his impetuous heart. The endless killing still made his heart extremely cold, but hope warmed the other half of his emotions, so that he wouldn't be completely occupied by any kind of emotion. This was a very strange feeling. When a person was living half in despair and half in hope, one moment he was so happy that he wanted to laugh, and the next moment he was so scared that he wanted to cry. At this time, it seemed that it was appropriate to say that he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Mu Yu's expression was also very rich, but it was a pity that he couldn't see it. Gradually, all the impetuosity and joy were gradually forgotten by Mu Yu. His heart was like a calm water surface, without the slightest ripple, and he fell into a state of selflessness. His consciousness lingered in the black and white world, constantly shuttling back and forth between the two sides, but he wasn't affected at all. He was looking for the balance between the black and white. Slowly, his expression no longer changed, and the black and white around him calmed down, no longer moving restlessly. It was as if something had summoned it, and it retreated to the two sides like a tide. Ku Mu suddenly felt something, and the black and white world here began to change. He saw an opportunity and jumped into the intersection between the black and white. His consciousness had already taken the initiative to retreat and return to his own body. Outside, Xie Bulo and Feng Haochen both felt a majestic and melodious aura, and they immediately took Ku Mu out of the room. Xie Bulo's hands continuously formed a demonic red formation that merged into the entire room, isolating the aura of the room. The black and white leaves of the underworld grass in Mu Yu's hand began to move rhythmically, and a violent aura began to fluctuate. The balance between the black and white was broken, and if it wasn't stabilized in time, the aura of death and the aura of life would escape and occupy this room. Then, it would spread to the entire 50-kilometer garden in the south, and as time passed, it would even spread to the entire 3 continents. Mu Yu opened his eyes. His left eye flashed with white light, and his right eye was filled with black light. A terrifying aura exploded from his body. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.